coast of Florida. Spring Training Baseball 2015. Grapefruit League action from Bradenton and McKechnie Field, this historic ballpark. We are 3 weeks into Spring Training 2015. Folks filing in on this St. Patrick's Day, and happy St. Patty's Day to you as the Pirates welcome their former Central Division rivals in the National League, the Houston Astros. And we're thrilled to be joined by our friends from Root Sports down in Southwest in Houston, Texas, Bill Brown and Alan Ashby. Greg Brown along with Bob Walk. We'll talk to Bob in just a moment about the story involving the Pirates, but what better to have on the day we celebrate the green than to have a couple of Browns and Bill Brown. Bill?
Thanks, Brownie. Two Brownies today as well. And Ash, we're going to be highlighting the battle for fifth starter spots, and then these guys will do the same thing for the Pirates. And that comes into focus today for the Astros, who start Roberto Hernandez in this game.
Right now, Brownie, pretty much hotly contested for the Astros. Roberto Hernandez, as Brownie says, goes out there today. Samuel Deduno's the guy you see first there on the list, a guy who's been around the big leagues 4 or 5 years, has shown that he has the stuff to be able to succeed. Good put-away splitter. Roberto Hernandez, Fausto Carmona, you may have known him as, won 19 games 1 year, way back in 2007. He has struggled since. Dan Straley, a guy who's been with the Oakland A's and the Chicago Cubs, has struggled with his numbers through the years. And then one of the younger guys, and yet he's 26 years of age, Asher Wojciechowski, a guy who's thrown the ball very well this spring.
Now, for the Pirates, Greg Brown coming off another playoff appearance. The top of the rotation has some flamethrowers. How about the bottom part?
We've talked about this, Bill and Alan and Bob, about the fact that there really aren't a lot of stories involving the Pittsburgh Pirates. Not a lot of jobs to be had, but one certainly is the fifth starter spot.
And the other Brownie, you were right that they aren't flamethrowers, but they have both really, I think, established themselves in the big leagues of being very competent big league pitchers. At times, being much better than a number 5 guy. So it's a great problem for the Pirates to have. They really kind of have this situation at a number of positions where you have too many players for spots available, and the loser of the competition is not going to be too happy because any one of these two guys deserves to be in that rotation on what they've done for the Pirates in the past.
So we're getting ready for Spring Training Baseball 2015. We've got the Browns, we've got the Astros and the Pirates. Bill?
And we've got the wearing of the green here on this beautiful March 17th as the field is prepared for the Astros and Pirates, longtime National League Central rivals, now squaring off from different leagues today. And it comes your way in just a moment. Analyst work today here on Root Sports Southwest in Houston. Voted the all-time best catcher in Astros history. Switch hitter, 17 years with Houston, Cleveland, and Toronto. Great numbers. Bob Walk, 14 years with Pittsburgh, Atlanta, Philadelphia, handling the analyst duties on the Pirates side of TV today. Striking out the killer bees, Biggio and Bagwell, along the way to his 105 wins and a 4.03 ERA. And you guys squared off against each other with your teams playing the 1980 National League Championship Series. You with the Phillies at that point, Bob and Ash. You're on a friendly basis today, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, at least for the moment. Yeah.
It really was one of the great playoff series of all time. I think everybody will agree with that. I'm not just saying that because the Phillies won, but it was incredibly exciting. All those controversial plays in that series, the extra innings, it was pretty awesome.
Yeah. Of course, the Astros through those 80s had some good series, but never came out on top.
It was tough. And now we see the Pirates have taken the field. They're 6-5 so far this spring. The lefty Jeff Locke tuning it up to face the Astros. And we go with the Pirate former farmhand in Robbie Grossman leading it off for the Astros. He's in left field. George Springer's in right. Chris Carter's the DH. Jason Castro's the cleanup man and the catcher, with Matt Dominguez playing third. John Singleton's at first. Jonathan Villar at shortstop. Marwin Gonzalez playing second today. And Jake Marisnik is the center fielder. Pitcher Roberto Hernandez.
Jeff Locke is really having a pretty good spring training at this point. He knows he's in a battle for that last spot. And what's always key for Jeff is his control of that fastball, moving it in and out, especially inside to right-hand hitters, keeping him honest, opening things up for that changeup. And we have seen in the past when he does that, he can be very, very good. Has made it a National League All-Star game. He can be as good as anybody, and it's going to be odd if he's the odd man out when it all comes down to the end and he doesn't get the fifth spot.
Defensively for the Pirates today, a bunch of names that I'm not overly familiar with, but you see the outfield left to right, Jeff Decker, Starling Marte, and Gregory Polanco. They've got a really good outfield, the starting bunch. On the infield, Josh Harrison, what a year he had last year. Jordy Mercer, Neil Walker, great player. Pedro Alvarez now on the other side of the infield, and Francisco Cervelli, newcomer behind the dish.
Russell Martin has moved along to Toronto, and Cervelli takes over as the planned main catcher for the Buccos. Locke going to work, and that one floats outside to Robbie Grossman, ball one. Quite a story here with Robbie Grossman, now 25 years old, having been drafted by the Pirates in the 6th round in 08, traded for Wandy Rodriguez in July of 2012. And he cranks one to right field. That backs up Polanco. Polanco plays it off the wall. Grossman hits a bolt right out of the chute and a leadoff double for the switch hitter.
Robbie Grossman, Brownie, as you say, switch hitter. He's kind of had a tale of two seasons, two sides of the plate the last couple of years. 2 years ago, very good from the right side of the plate, and maybe starting again that way as he shoots one the other way. Last year, a much better left-handed hitter. But Robbie, a guy who likes to take a lot of pitches, a little more aggressive here in the spring.
He really did a nice job with that, swing that ball up and away, and didn't try to get out and hook it anywhere, went with it. As always here at McKechnie Field, we look at which way the breeze is blowing, a little bit out to right. Things are going to carry out there.
That one did, and Robbie is now 10 for 23 this spring. There you see the breeze, and it's George Springer batting in the number 2 spot. Springer takes, and there is strike one. Tom Hallion is calling the balls and strikes today. Springer with 20 home runs in 78 major league games last year. He drove in 51 with a .231 batting average, but then he had a quad muscle strain and had to sit out weeks, and had not had a hit since July when he got his first hit this spring, but has been healthy all spring long after working with a different type of conditioning program. He had a gymnastics kind of routine during the winter. He was a gymnast as a youngster. His mother was a gymnast, and he was working on pushing and pulling his body weight, so to speak. Ash,
I'm going to have to try that, because have you looked at his body? Oh,
yeah, it's incredible, isn't it?
Last year, second half, he got bigger and bigger as he was spending time on the bench nursing the injury. But I don't think you can appreciate it by looking at the screen right here, but this is one unimuscle standing there at home plate.
He's had a good spring, 7 hits and 20 at-bats, 2 home runs. And the key is for him to be healthy this year after the numbers he put up in about a half season last year. He is quite capable. He was almost a member of the 40-40 club in the minor leagues. There you see the breakdown.
with not much play at all in the second half of the season. But over one stretch, Bob, he hit 7 homers in 7 games, and a lot of Astros fans are hoping he could be kind of the Andrew McCutchen of the Houston team.
I really have heard a ton about this young man, and I guess the one thing that he'd like to work on the most is to be able to continue to hit the ball out of the ballpark, but at the same time maybe cut down on the strikeouts.
His strikeouts likely will be a large number, even with great improvement this year, I would say. But this is the one guy that I think, at least for me, from what I've seen, has the ability to most have a shot at being a superstar now in the National League, or rather in the American League. It's still hard to make that transition for the Astros.
Yeah, we have flashbacks all the time, don't we? In fact, Mr. Walk was talking about some of his favorite Houston restaurants, which he no longer gets to frequent, and these two teams are playing each other only sparingly every few years in interleague play. And there's the new hitting coach, Dave Hudgens. Formerly was an Astros minor league hitting coach, rejoining the organization as the big league hitting coach this season. Springer is down on strikes for out number 1 for Locke. You mentioned Locke's stuff, Bob, and he came from Atlanta, where he was a second-round pick in 06 in the trade for Nate McLeod in 09. We'll talk about that in a moment.
Pitch out of the strike zone for the strikeout, by the way. Sorry, Bob. But George Springer, normally such a free swinger that the first couple of pitches that were in the strike zone called strikes would not get by without a big hack.
He's not really a power guy by any means, and he can throw the ball 90-91, so I don't classify him as a soft tosser either. But really, when it all boils down to the changeup for him, that's such a great pitch when he is on, and that's what he's really tries to set up with the fastball. And he has a pretty good curveball at times also. A little bit of a big, slowish type breaker, but he can get some chases down and in on it.
He was an all-star in 2013. Won 8 games in a row over one stretch that season. Do you see any similarities between him and another former Atlanta lefty named Tom Glavine?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely believe that that's the type of pitcher he could be. Where the similarity really ends, or what I think Jeff Locke has to prove, is he can have anything close to the control that Glavine had. And Glavine could put anything he threw just about any spot he wanted to. And it really made him such a tremendous pitcher.
It's a line shot to left field. That's a hit in front of Decker, one hopper. And going into third base, Robbie Grossman, throw back to first. There's the single. And the Astros have men on at the corners.
It's been a quiet spring for Chris Carter, so nice to see him hang it out. But one thing he has done is cut down on the strikeouts, and he did a lot of that second half of last year. He cut down on the stroke, more of a line drive type hitter, but he's got so much power that a lot of those line drives went out of the yard.
A.J. Hinch, new skipper of the Astros, formerly the manager of Arizona, and he had been in front office work 4 years before getting this opportunity to come back on the field. His club has won 6, lost 4, and split 3. Sometimes they quit after 9 innings of tie baseball in spring training. So there are ties in baseball after all. Although we're not wearing any today. And there's strike 1 to Castro.
But still no crying.
Yeah, well, I think we've already had 2 ties this year.
Have you?
Our overall record looks like a hockey team.
So we are clearly above the Pirates in the standings.
Clearly.
Well, spring training is so unlike the regular season in many ways, but for Pirate fans, they're seeing a lot of these same faces that they've been seeing, right?
Yeah, pretty much. But Clint has been real careful with pushing the starters out there for too long. They've been real easy with Kutch out in center field, giving him some DH work early on, and just taking it really slow with a lot of guys, knowing that the main thing is to break camp, especially this year, with so many positions already decided. Just be healthy when the season starts.
Andrew McCutchen sitting out today. He's missed the last few days. Nothing major. Also, having gone to postseason the last couple of years, the season is extended a little bit, so sometimes veteran players get a bit of a break from playing time in spring, Bob.
No road trips.
Yeah.
Broadcasters fit in on that one?
No, broadcasters make road trips. In fact, I think this is only my second home game this year.
Oh.
I've had the pleasure of broadcasting.
Greg Brown, your partner, will be stepping in for some innings later on today. That's strike 3 call for Locke. That was a Glavine-like pitch.
Of course, the outside corners aren't quite the same as the Glavine-Maddox days.
That's what I was going to add there. Is that Jeff doesn't have the pleasure of working with that same plate that really everybody got to use. And I've always kind of explained it like this. When you first get to the major leagues in the past, the plate was pretty much the way it was. But if you got that veteran status someday, now you can start working with a little couple inches here, a couple inches there, and they would let you have that. And it's just not like that anymore.
I think Javi Lopez, as the everyday catcher then for the Braves, had a different catcher's box than most guys.
Yes, he did. Saw Ray Searage there, the Pirates' fine pitching coach. Is he as good as he's cracked up to be? He gets a lot of good publicity.
Outstanding, yes.
Matt Dominguez, 5 for 18 this spring, trying to hang on to his job at third.
He has such a good relationship with his pitchers. I mean, they all just love him to death, and he works so hard with every one of them.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what makes a great pitching coach?
Well, that's a great question that I haven't really been able to answer over the years. I don't know, but the ones that I've really liked are the ones you have that personal relationship with. It's somebody that you can, basically spill your guts to at times, and they'll still put their arm around you and figure out a way to make you still believe in yourself even when things aren't going well. And especially at the major league level, I've always thought that it's the mental coaching they do that's more important than, where your feet are or where your hand is and the wind up and stuff.
Locke makes the play to get Dominguez. No runs, couple of hits, 2 men left, no score. The threat, but they left runners on at the corners on the top of the first inning after their 2 hits. Now it's the Pirates at bat in the bottom of the first inning. Pirates have won 6 and lost 5 so far this spring. This is the way they shape up for manager Clint Hurdle, who had surgery on both hips in the offseason. Josh Harrison, Francisco Cervelli, the newcomer, Gregory Polanco, Neil Walker, Starling Marte playing center field today in the absence of McCutchen. Pedro Alvarez has shifted from third base to first this year. Jordy Mercer, Jeff Decker in left, Jeff Lockeridge.
On the hill, it is Roberto Hernandez. Fausto Carmona, he was known by for a number of years, second year in the big leagues with the Indians. 19-8. He was fantastic, and since then he's really had his struggles. 26 games under 500, the totals for Hernandez, so a lot of work to be done as he vies now for this 5 spot in the rotation.
35 years old, born in Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. He was with the Phillies and Dodgers last year. Ground ball out to the left of the shortstop and to his left. A good play there. And there's a guy who played a lot last year, Jonathan VR. More of a utility man type approach for him so far this spring, though, Ash.
A great tool guy. This is a guy that, as a baseball eye, you latch on right away. You say, wow, this guy's got a great throwing arm. He's fast. He's got power, especially from the right side of the plate, and yet it hasn't translated to this point. A lot of mistakes defensively.
Francisco Cervelli has put on a Pirate uniform after coming from the Yankees. They signed him in 2003. He was traded for Justin Wilson after hitting .301 in just 146 at-bats last year as a Yankee.
Well, the Pirates have very high expectations of Cervelli, hoping that the only problems he had in New York was he couldn't stay on the field, that it was too many injuries, and that if he stays healthy, that he can do just about everything Russell Martin has done for us the last couple of years, which I can't say enough good things about Russell Martin, by the way. He was just fantastic. Hit well for us, did a great job with the pitchers, and even his presence in the clubhouse was fantastic.
Cervelli, like Martin, has been known as a good pitch framer. And Ash was talking on the drive down, Walkie, about how often we hear that term now for catchers. That's been one of the real trends in baseball, talking about catchers as pitch framers.
May I just preface, Bob, back when I was playing, which is a little before you in some good part, umpires would get mad. They hated catchers trying to pull pitches, and it makes them look bad a lot of times. But now it's become a very popular thing to talk about, especially for certain groups inside Major League Baseball. I'm just really curious if it really is effective, or is it all about the pitching staff, the one that has guys that are really close to the zone all the time, or the other teams where they're wide and out of the zone?
Yeah, I don't really have the answer for that. I know that I think the reason it gets talked about so much now is because they can put a number on it, because of the, you have the strike zone sitting there that, well, we don't have today, but we show it a lot, and every pitch is tracked, and to the half inch whether it was a strike or not. So now they can say, okay, this catcher gets a certain percentage of balls called strikes, and actually put a number on it. But then I think you can go deeper and you can ask the question, which, Ash, I think you're asking, is why? Is it the pitcher? Is it the umpire? What combinations of things? Because I have seen some fluctuations from some guys over the last couple of years in that percentage number, and I'm like, well, I thought this guy was supposed to be real bad. Now this year he's good. How did that change? And then they go the other way.
And does that come down to the pitching staff? For example, on the Pirates, if the guy who wound up catching A.J. Burnett all the time got compared to somebody who, and I don't know who the control guy on the Pirates might be, Locke maybe, for example, would those two catchers compare differently in that category, simply because one caught a pitcher who's wild and curveballs in the dirt and all that sort of thing, and the other guy has a guy who's throwing the sinker and slider close to the strike zone? Does that guy get the benefit?
Who the umpires might give more pitches to.
Right.
Who really is doing the most work here, the catcher or the pitcher? Is kind of, and as far as getting that call.
Yeah, and for me, I think I tend to lean toward the pitcher to make it easy on the umpire and not so much the catcher, but a lot of people see it differently.
What I've always liked from a pitching standpoint, and this is kind of an interesting conversation you and I can have, I've never really thought about this too much as far as asking a catcher to please do this, because I think it's kind of a natural thing, but it seemed like I would get more calls if the hands were as quiet as possible.
Yeah.
The more movement of that glove, the worse things would get as far as getting a borderline pitch called a strike.
So there's that frisky catcher behind the plate, and you see him yanking pitches back toward the heart of the plate. You don't really, as a pitcher, want to see that.
No, I think you're telling everybody that was a ball, and you're trying to make it look like it's a strike. I don't want that. Just be quiet. The hand doesn't move.
After the walk to Cervelli, Gregory Polanco, 4 hits and 22 at-bats. 23-year-old outfielder who has great promise. He had about a half season, 277 at-bats in the big leagues last year. Both of his parents in the Dominican Republic are police officers, so he's probably a very disciplined guy, Walkie.
He is a very good guy. He's a great young man. A pleasure to be around. And the talent level is really off the chart. He can run, hit, throw, do it all. Has just absolutely mashed coming up through the minor leagues. Tremendous numbers at AA and AAA. And got off to a fabulous start when he first got called up last year. After about a month, we're just thinking, wow, this guy is the people are, it's Pittsburgh, so people start saying Clemente.
Yeah.
But then he ran into some offers, and I think it got to him. I think he lost a little confidence, and it was with any youngster when they first get to the big leagues. I think part of it is trying to prove to themselves that they can do it themselves.
Out to center field and caught just shy of the warning track. Out number 2. Jake Marisnick is really a guy who patrols the outfield exceptionally well. And the Astros love his defensive ability. Just a question of whether he can hit enough to claim the job, Ash.
It's been a real question as to who's the center fielder on this team, Marisnick or Springer, or Colby Rasmus, and there are some guys that can play out there. But I tell you what, between Springer and Marisnick, you've got a couple of guys that can go get the ball aggressively and do it well, maybe as good as anybody in the game. And I know the Pirates, Joaquin, are touted to have maybe as good an outfield as there is.
Well, if Polanco really pans out and becomes the player that he could be, yeah, it's going to be tough to find a better one. Marte really starting to come into his own. You got 3 guys that are true center fielders all playing in the same outfield. And I guess in your ballpark, in your home ballpark, somebody playing center field that can go get the ball is imperative. You got to have that kind of player because it's huge out there.
Michael Bourne was very good at doing that. He took away a lot of extra base hits. That really is a very important spot.
You got to be able to go, but maybe that left field area with that scoreboard and much like Fenway Park can be the real tough spot out there. So, and usually the guy that's considered to be a little short defensively goes to left.
Marisnick takes charge in center for out number 3, and it's no score after 1. One, Julia Morales has made it in from out west. She's been covering training camps in Arizona as well. Your first game on Root Sports Southwest. Are you excited, Julia?
I'm just thrilled. I'm glad to have all these new viewers. I'm glad to see you guys again. I've missed you guys a lot. Let's talk John Singleton, though. He's starting things off for us here in the second, and catching up with him this spring. You just get the vibe. He's refreshed. This guy had a couple of really frustrating months at the end of last season. We all saw the numbers, and he needed to just shut it down. He didn't think about baseball for a while. Get this, he didn't even watch sports for a while. Just really got away. It's what he needed, and the competition guys at first base has really got him focused this spring, and you can see it in his spring training numbers, but he's starting to feel a little bit better and seeing more smiles out of Singy.
That is one of the keys for this Astros club in 2015. Who's the first baseman? 184 in the first half, 155 in the second half, 168 his overall average. And this spring he has produced some good numbers for what you make of that, and we wouldn't make a whole lot of that at this point, would we, Ash?
You don't make it anything of it when you're trying to tout a guy. This guy's going to be really good. Look at the spring he's put together. That becomes laughable. But when a guy has had his struggles, as Singleton did last year, I think it's imperative that you go out and look like you can play and man the position.
He does have the power, illustrated by his 13 home runs last season.
Yeah, those March numbers really, you can get so fooled by them. But as you said, if it's somebody that's struggling and then they come to spring training and then continue the struggles, well, then maybe it is starting to mean something.
Bob Walk, Alan Ashby, Bill Brown with you today. Greg Brown will be with you for the next few innings as we mix it up and send this game back to both Pittsburgh and Houston on Root Sports today. Glad to have you with us on our first televised game. It's the first televised game back to Pittsburgh as well, Bob?
No, we've actually been on the air a couple of times.
Okay, so it's old hat for you guys. You like Bradenton?
Oh, I love it. Been coming here since '84. Absolutely beautiful place. This old ballpark has really changed over the years.
Walker to his left. It sure has. It was redone a few years ago. It's very nice now. This ballpark was here for many, many years.
I get to looking at Neil Walker in this beautiful ballpark here in Bradenton. In fact, one of the first places I ever played in pro ball, starting out in the Sarasota area, right up, I guess, north up the road. But Neil Walker being one of those mainstays for the Pirates in the recent successful years. What are the reasons the Pirates have been so good recently?
Well, I think that it's not just one thing, but for me, the biggest thing is that the starting rotation has really become part of it's a strength. Nobody ever gets to the postseason unless you have starting pitching. For a number of years, we might have one or two guys that were okay. Surely nobody you could ever throw out there as a possible Cy Young winner. We never really had any of that for years and years and years. But now you're starting to see that we can have a starting rotation that you can put up against most everybody else's. And the team you have to beat, at least most recently in that NL Central, as you guys know, is the Cardinals. And one thing they've always had is that great pitching. And to me, that's the difference. Now, we have some pretty darn good players, too. We have a National League MVP out in center field and Andrew McCutchen. But it is the pitching that's changed the most and made the difference for us here in Pittsburgh.
And A.J. Burnett chose to come back to the Pirates.
Yeah. I mean, and that, I think, reflects a little bit on the perception by all the players around the league of what Pittsburgh is like now. It's different. It's a winning organization. It's fun to play for, a good place to come.
How much part does the ballpark play for, in this case, a pitcher, A.J., decides to leave Philadelphia, a notorious hitter's ballpark, and come here?
Diving play to the left, and a low throw, and it gets by Alvarez on one bounce. VR is safe at first base on the Josh Harrison dive, and the throw skipped by the first second.
I think that A.J. has come out and said that, okay, this is it. This is my last year no matter what. And he wanted it to be somewhere that he knows he can be successful and that he has a fun, time being, where he enjoyed himself. It was a no-brainer for him to come back to Pittsburgh. They were looking for somebody to kind of put in that spot where you don't have to be at the top of the rotation anymore. You have Cole really coming on in that regard. And Francisco is also going to be a top type guy. It looks like this year that Slider is there again. So I think that it was a no-brainer for AJ. If the situation came about where he could come back to Pittsburgh, he had to do it. And the situation came about, and here he is. And it's a little different for him, I think. He doesn't have that leadership, quote-unquote, mantle to have to wear. He can worry more about, himself out there in the middle of the diamond. Not so much is he going to be looked at by young guys and that sort of thing. It's all about baseball for him this year, and I hope he has a great final season with the Bucks.
That last play was a throwing error for Josh Harrison. Marwin Gonzalez batting. And another sharp one to Harrison. This time he does not have to leave his feet on a 5-4-3 double play. With the one error, no problem as Locke follows it up with a double play ball to keep this game scoreless after an inning and a half. You're with us today for spring training baseball on Root Sports. Astros nothing, Pirates nothing. After 1.5, we go to the Pirates second. Marte Alvarez and Mercer due up against Roberto Hernandez. Had good stuff in that first inning. And there's ball one. Marte with 7 hits and 21 at bats. Hernandez is making his first start of the spring. He made 2 relief appearances. He was late coming to camp with visa issues from the Dominican Republic. Meanwhile, very good year for Marte last year. Well, he's an athletic. You were talking about the outfielders earlier, Bob and Ash, and he's an athletic type who can move over to center field. And sure, you don't find another McCutchen around when he's not in there, but Marte will do as a center fielder for now, right?
You could argue that he's the best defensive outfielder out there. I mean, he runs just as well. The speed-wise, you know, I don't know. We talk about this a lot. Who would win a race between he and Kutch? He's got an absolute cannon for an arm. I mean, the tools are amazing, and if he comes on with the offense like he did the second half last year, he's going to be some kind of a player.
Grossman with the catch. Alvarez next. Well, you talked about the dimensions of center field at Minute Maid Park and the spacious ballpark in Pittsburgh, BNC. Massive left field, so you need an athletic player there.
Exactly. You need a center field type guy to go out and play left field, kind of like what you were talking about, Ash, that with kind of a tricky left field at Minute Maid, and you always kind of put your outfielder that can't do much out in left. Well, with these two teams, that's not necessarily a good recipe.
Yeah. That's usually, though, the way teams line things up coming out of spring training. You put your stud athlete in center field, and then you've got the guy with the big arm in right field. And left field is a guy that you perceive is going to drive in some runs for you, and hopefully he can man the position, not have things go too wrong for the pitchers.
Hernandez changing speeds pretty well today, Ash.
He's throwing strikes, and he's working much more quickly than I perceive that he worked in the past. I wonder how much the speed-up rules are going to help the ball game and maybe ultimately help pitchers. I think the standing around has been detrimental to everybody.
He gets it through the shift and into right field for an Alvarez single. So how will they take effect once opening day comes around? Well, the batter must keep 1 foot. One of the exceptions is if he fouls off a pitch, he doesn't have to do that. Or if a pitch knocks him down. Between inning breaks are timed, and we've seen that here in spring training. Players will be fined for violations starting in May. So the break-in period continues through April. And this will be the case in the minor leagues as well. And Reed Ryan, the Astros president, was saying, Ash, that in the minor leagues it'll be enforced a little differently. If a hitter doesn't get back in the box in time, then a strike would be called on him.
Good.
Or the pitcher would be penalized the ball if he doesn't throw it.
I actually remember sometimes, it didn't happen often, but it did happen where umpires would say to the catcher as the hitter roamed out of the box, tell him to go ahead and throw the ball. Throw it right now. Let's go. It'll be a strike. And
it doesn't matter where you throw it either. It's going to be a strike.
Throw it up there. You got a strike. And that's what I would love to see. Or just go ahead and assess a strike. Let's play the game in a timely fashion. I was hoping, and I'm really glad that Major League Baseball came out with some changes to speed the game up. I was hoping for more, but I'll take anything in the right direction. And it sounds like folks are interested in maybe even doing more down the line, seeing how things work out. I think the Players Association has their reasons why they don't want to change things too much too quickly. But I really do believe the game of baseball needs a speed up. I think that we want to see more youngsters out at the ballpark.
And I also believe that the players really can't complain too much because they've brought this upon themselves. They could have policed it, but they haven't. So now the rule makers have to police it.
I think the strike zone can be enlarged to the strike zone that's written in the rule book as well. I don't know if umpires are going to buy into that. But I think there are ways, if you can get the pitcher to throw the ball and the hitter to stay near the box and swing the bat, and that's going to be a challenge that may not be won because of the belief that you go deep in counts to try to win ball games.
Out to right center field, George Springer with the play.
But if you can get baseball actually being played, what a fantastic game, and maybe a fantastic notion that you get guys to make that happen.
And I don't want to be too critical on the hitters because I know that there are pitchers that take forever out there, but I watched some highlight games, some historical type games of just going back 30-40 years, and nobody ever took a big walk. I mean, 1 foot out of the box was the norm.
Yeah.
You didn't see guys going all the way to the grass, and you see that so much now on every pitch. Like, where are they going? It's like they got to put on the show. And there are some pitchers that do the same thing. But that if they just take that out of the game.
Well, one of the things that's also gone on with the hitters, it's become the big thing to do to have as many pitches thrown to you as possible. Now, you can make your arguments for why that's valuable, and everybody has their own belief system on it, and I can see where there can be some value there.
Robbie Grossman in left field. Greg Brown is coming out of the bullpen to take over the play-by-play in the 3rd inning. No runs a hit, and a man left here, and no score after a couple.
Welcome back to McKechnie Field in Bradenton, Florida. 0-0 as we go to the 3rd inning. Greg Brown now in Bill Brown's seat, along with Alan Ashby and Bob Walk. And downstairs we go to Robbie and Smikowski. Robbie.
Greg, the Pirates today had a very good morning. They made a young man's day extremely special. We're talking about 7-year-old Owen Taylor, who is from Everett, Pennsylvania. The Pirates partnered up with the Make-A-Wish Foundation of Western PA and Virginia. And last night he spent the night at Pirate City. Today, got to hang out with his idol and go through pregame drills. Getting his ears tucked in with Pedro Alvarez, too, in the hat. Got to hang out with his idol, Andrew McCutchen. It was a fantastic day. He had breakfast at Pirate City, came out today, worked out throughout the first pitch right there to Pirate Parrot. I asked him if he could describe this day in the morning and the afternoon after he did last night. He looked at me and smiled and said one word, Greg. He said it was fun.
Well, it looked like a lot of fun, and boy, he gunned that ball toward the Parrot, didn't he? There he is. Owen Taylor.
Where's the ice for the arm?
Yeah, that's right. That's coming, right? Jeff Locke delivers to Jake Marisnik.
Had to be fun for him over at the Pirate City and staying there, spending the night, getting up, having breakfast with all the troops.
Mercer. On to Alvarez. Play goes 6-3. 1 up and 1 down. Top of the order now, Robbie Grossman.
Bob and I were talking about catchers and their ability to get strikes called by the way they catch pitches. Take a look at this pitch. Now, that's really close. Some catchers are going to have that called a strike. I don't know if it's because of what he did. I don't know that that ball can be caught any nicer than it was. I don't know if it's because of who the pitcher is or who the hitter is. But when it's all said and done, guys get evaluated on that.
A base hit in front of Polanco, so Robbie Grossman 2 for 2.
Now, if it's a veteran star type pitcher, he might get that pitch called a strike, the same pitch. But then in today's game, it's the catcher that's going to get the credit for that.
Credit or the lack.
Or the blame. Either way, it can work both ways because the computer says this is the percentage of balls he got called strikes.
How about if Joe Morgan had been at the plate, would that have been a call to strike? Or if Alan Ashby had been there, would it have? You know, and that's, I think that's a big part of what people are evaluating and crediting to somebody that I'm not sure the credit really lies where it's coming.
We talked about that earlier today, Alan, you and I and Bob and Bill, about it seems to be over the last few years, that's kind of it's in vogue to talk about what catchers do defensively, the pitch framing, the pitch calling, and it's interesting to hear your take on that as a former big league catcher.
I know that umpires just hated guys that tried to pull pitches. It would drive them crazy. Now, I can't speak for umpires today, but I would assume they feel the same way. But Bob said, and I think it's absolutely true, guys that are quiet and catch the ball smoothly and quiet toward their body, those are the guys that probably will get more calls, but those calls will usually come on the hitter that hasn't gained the respect yet, or for the pitcher who has gained it.
Right.
And to me, that's the biggest part that plays.
Well, maybe the biggest question this offseason, I guess this has kind of been covered the first couple of innings with you guys, is about Russell Martin being gone and now Cervelli being the guy, and what a difference that will make for the Pirates.
Yeah, and only you guys can talk about it, and then it's still only talk, because probably for right now and maybe even after the end of the season, how do you assess it? Was Cervelli the reason you were able to come back and win the division over the Cardinals or whoever it might be? It's a composite of a lot of things that go on and go right for a club.
So, hope he hits and keeps the ball off the backstop.
There you go.
Pretty much it right there, isn't it? Yeah.
It's funny how you get to toward the end of a season and a team does well, and then the reporters come in and start asking, so was it your catcher? Was it your shortstop? How about the center fielder? Were these guys the reason you were so good this year? Somebody who's having a nice year? It's hard to say. It's I don't even know if it's chemistry sometimes, but something starts to click and you start to win for whatever reason. George Springer is really passive so far here today, and that's a different George Springer than I'm accustomed to.
Struck out swinging in the first.
Showing some patience.
Yeah, patience, or maybe not seeing the ball well. And again, different ways to assess what's going on. But after you take a close one, it's called a ball inside. This one maybe off the outside edge, called a strike. Did the catcher do a great job right there in getting that call?
Phenomenal.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Broken bat and off of Harrison's glove into left. And Springer will head towards second base, and he's there. So it's a double for Springer. And the Astros have runners at second and third with one out. Let's go back downstairs to Robbie.
You guys a second ago talking catchers, and look at Francisco Cervelli for just a second in his game outfit behind the plate. Something on him looks familiar. Maybe the chest protector. That's Russell Martin's chest protector with the Rawlings gold seal in there for Russell Martin winning the gold glove. Cervelli is wearing Russell Martin's chest protector. During spring training only, he's having a custom chest protector made, and it's not quite ready yet. So once he does, we'll say goodbye to the rest of Russell Martin's equipment out of Bradenton, guys.
Does he get, as a new one, something that has a gold seal on there?
I don't think the new one.
Not yet, right? Yeah.
No, he's a gold glover for this spring training. As long as he wears that, I guess.
I guess Russell Martin has no use for it now. Black and gold. And now wearing the Blue Jays colors.
Of course, we know the way pitchers can be, and at some point do you hear some pitcher say, I love the way he looked behind the plate in the spring with that gold thing on his chest. Now I just don't like the look.
Jeff Locke, who got out of trouble in the first inning. The Astros had runners at first and third with one out.
Going to mention after Springer got that kind of shows his strength. That the bat, you could see it just shattered and still hit the ball so hard that it easily got by Jay down at third base. He is going to be somebody to watch.
Yeah, when you guys had a young, and not that he's not young anymore, but McCutchen came along, how long did it take for you to say, you know what, this guy's going to be one of the game's best?
Well, the first thing you see is the talent. And I think that's where you say, okay, he's got a chance to be one of the game's best. And that's probably where Springer is right now. Wouldn't you say that you see the possibilities are there? And that's what you look at with McCutchen that first year, that the raw speed when he was running the bases. And even though he's kind of a small package, the power pack, the way the ball would jump off his bat. And I think with all first-year players, when they get up there, you can tell the guys that maybe have something special.
Guys that have that chance to be exceptional.
That's a fair ball. And Grossman and Springer score. Carter into second with a 2-run double. 2-0 Houston.
But you're right, Bob, and that's who George Springer is, tool-wise. And if you went down and you actually met him right now, I believe what you'd come away with, wow, physically, this guy is off the charts. And now here's Carter coming through again. A couple of seeing eye jobs by third.
Yeah, I thought that Harrison would be able to make this play, but just came up a little short. Right on the chalk line, tipped off the edge of the glove. We saw him down during batting practice, and he just had his T-shirt on, and he is a.
Oh, so you got a peek.
He's a physical specimen.
Yeah, he is.
No doubt about that.
Well, and some of that, as you talked about last year, came out, and it was one of those shows that only the very unique player can put on for a period of time. You can look at the overall numbers and say, well, those aren't that good, but you had to watch what went on with it, and the guy has a chance to be one of the great players.
High fly ball to deep right off the bat of Jason Castro, and onto the boardwalk it goes. A 2-run homer for the Astros catcher and a 4-0 lead in the third.
Now, this is not the outing that Jeff Locke needed at this point of the year, or this point of the spring, because you're starting to make some kind of decisions of who's going to get the innings when you're picking your 5 starters. And so far, I think it's been kind of a neck and neck thing with him and Worley, but you have to decide something, because they both have a track record of pitching well at the big league level. So it's going to come down, to what happens here in March. It shouldn't, but that's the way it's going to be.
It's kind of a wheelhouse fastball, but at the same time, even though it's not a big time wind, it's a wind blowing to right field, and
it helped
hitters can take advantage.
Yeah, you can, as a pitcher, you're going to always rationalize and say, well, that it's a McKechnie home run. The wind caught it, but it is what it is. Then when the wind's galing in at certain days and you can't get a ball out of here with a cannon shot, you don't say, well, I would have gave up 4 today, but you always forget that part of it.
Yeah, the pitcher's doing it, or the hitters, depending on which way it goes. Everybody has their evaluation as to whether it was fair or not.
Yeah.
But spring training seems to be different than the course of the main season, when you settle in at night and you play games typically without a lot of wind going on. And early part of the year can be tough, I would imagine, in Pittsburgh, though.
Fly to left, and Decker coming in, and trouble with that sky, and he's battling it, and he makes the catch.
That's an unheralded but really nice play right there. Battling that sun, that you need that guy that stays with it and eventually makes the play.
He's getting that hand up there, trying to give himself some help. And one thing, and Greg and I have talked about this over the last couple of years, that the demise of the flip downs. They've gone to the sunglasses that they can wear all the time, but there's no way they can be as dark and give you the help as some of those flip downs were like welder's goggles. You can look right into the sun. But you just don't see guys having the trust in those anymore. Everybody wants to wear just the normal sunglasses.
If they could make them look as cool as these that the guys wear, then
I wasn't going to say that. I was going to let you say that, because I know what the reason is.
Yeah. Well, the one that really gets you is when the sunglasses are on the top of the hat forward, and then even more extreme backwards on the top of the hat, and then you get that ball in the sun and you can't catch it.
And they're still on the cap, not over your eyes.
We had one last spring where one of the young guys was in the outfield, and eventually the ball dropped in the sun, and the glasses were on the hat, and quickly that particular player showed me some veteran ability as he turned his back to the dugout and therefore the manager, and slipped on his shades.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, that's a classic.
Veteran-esque move. Yeah. So at that point, I said, this guy's got some big league ability.
He's a quick thinker, anyway.
Yeah.
That's the guy you want in left in your. But you got to put the smart guy out in left field, because I'll get all those crazy little nuances about that big fence out there. We were talking earlier about what it takes a certain type of player to play left field in PNC and Minute Maid.
I think you guys might have as tough a left field as there is in the game. And I don't know how outfielders might assess it. Houston is really tough, as some people will say Fenway can be. I don't know if Manny Ramirez could play left field at Fenway Park. I might have a chance. No, I didn't say that.
Well, yeah, the right field at PNC Park can be interesting. There's some nuances involved with that. 320-foot to right field, the 21-foot high wall, as Polanco has found out in a hurry.
You know what I'm finding out? We have a tight strike zone on the edges here this afternoon.
So it looks like that, and that doesn't do Jeff Locke any favors.
Just foul past Alvarez.
He definitely needs to get his share of borderline pitches called strikes.
Apparently not a strong job behind the plate receiving. And I say that totally tongue-in-cheek.
Exactly. We know.
Locke struggling to get this last out. He won't go 4 innings. He was hoping to go 4 today. Got a reliever loosening in the bullpen.
One of us remembered to bring binoculars.
Strike 3 called. That was Bill Brown who brought those binoculars. Take a look at the Jason Castro home run. His first of the spring. Gives the Astros a 4-0 lead as we head to the bottom of the 3rd inning at McKechnie Field in Bradenton. Houston going to the bottom of the 3rd inning, and Jeff Locke will lead off. Jason Castro, a 2-run homer onto the boardwalk above the right field wall here at McKechnie Field. And Roberto Hernandez delivers a strike to the Pirates pitcher.
Pirates have been letting the pitchers hit this year because that was a really kind of a sore spot with us last year. That our pitchers, for the most part, except for Cole, were just horrible with the bat. They were no help to themselves at all. And the other side of the coin, it seemed like we couldn't get the other pitcher out ever. So
you know, it's funny you say that because it kind of falls in that elusive category once again, as the strikeout is recorded, where 1 year the Cardinals 2 years ago hit some ridiculous runners in scoring position,
320 or something,
maybe
like that,
higher, something
could have been
crazy.
higher,
And last year, no doubt, after every hitter on the Cardinals had a chance to say, well, you know, this is what I live for. I thrive to hit. And then it changes the next year, and it could be the very same thing for you guys and the pitchers. It's a crazy game from year to year.
But they're trying to get them more and more at bats, and not just at bats, putting them in situations where they can bunt. They've been sending the days that they don't pitch. They send them over to Pirate City for the camp games over there. and as soon as somebody gets on first base, they'll throw in one of our pitchers to try and bunt him over. You know, that sort of thing. Getting seeing some live pitching. And I will buy into this a little bit because I remember when they first started using the DH in spring training, even in the National League games, that there would be times where my first at bat during the year, I'm supposed to bunt somebody over, and since last September, I've had 2 at bats.
In other words, you weren't hitting at all in spring training.
No, you didn't see anything.
Yeah.
You didn't, you know, and the argument was, well, it's more important to get somebody, a regular player, some at bats as a DH than to let you go up there and hit. And you can buy into that. I understand that, but
you're 1/9 of the lineup, though, on a typical day during the season.
Dominguez will not throw. It'll be an infield hit for Josh Harrison.
So I also really understand and believe in what the Pirates are trying to do this year, of not leaving any stone unturned. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but get the pitchers some live pitches. Let them at least see something up there.
You know, a lot of people say, well, really, how much difference does a manager make in baseball? I think things like that actually make quite a difference.
Yeah, it's not so much as what the managers do between the first and the 9th inning as it is what are they doing the rest of the time that's important.
And that leads to the guys believing in them and really giving their all. And by the way, Roberto Hernandez has pitched along very well here this afternoon. And with the 4 guys that we mentioned today vying for that 5 spot in the Astros rotation, there's a couple of other names. Mark Appel, a couple of years ago, #1 pick overall in the draft, and Brad Peacock, who has been the last couple of years in the rotation, had a hip surgery, so he's going to be one of the guys eventually who will pitch in this rotation without a doubt. But Hernandez has not hurt his cause at all here today.
Non-roster invite, Roberto Hernandez facing Francisco Cervelli, who walked in the first. Both Pirate fans and Astro fans know very well the name Mark Appel, because Appel was drafted in the first round by the Pirates and did not sign in 2012. And the following year, the Astros picked him and signed him.
Well, he is a Houston product. He was born and raised there in Houston. I don't know how much, if any, that played in.
Pirates ended up getting a compensation pick out of it the following year.
And the Astros are going to get one of those this year based on issues with the #1 overall last year, Brady Aiken, who eventually did not sign. But the Astros have 2 of the top 5 picks in the draft, and that can be great.
Well, Harrison is picked off, but don't give up on him yet. And look at this. 2 of the most remarkable plays in all of baseball last year occurred on the bases with Josh Harrison, and somehow, some way, he avoided being tagged out on plays just like that.
Watch #1 what happens here. Look at the gap between first baseman and runner, and the throw goes to second base. And we were always taught to close that gap down by running real hard on the backside and closing on the front side so that one throw creates the out. That's just way too early on the throw.
Well, what you saw there was J.H. able to kind of just stand.
Yep.
You have to make the runner commit to running as hard as he can, one direction or the other. And if you do that, then he can't stop and turn around and go back before he's tagged. And we saw twice last year where teams didn't do that, and he's going back and forth. It looked like Little League rundowns. And he got out of them. And here, I've seen him get out of 3 rundowns now in less than a year. But it's almost as much as the defense really not doing the job as it is, J.H. being able to shake and bake.
I see an old face, and I say that in a friendly way. Bill Verdon in camp again today with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and a wonderful guy and a former manager of mine. But Bill used to always believe that all a rundown took was one throw.
Yeah.
And you worked on it, and you worked until it started to take one throw. And watching in recent years, not only teams that I'm watching every day, but all around Major League Baseball, you're seeing 2, 3, 4, 5 throws to get a rundown taken care of.
Bill Verdon seated between Mike LaValliere and Ray Searage in the back there.
Yeah, he was a no-nonsense guy.
Yes, he was.
He got it out of his players.
Former Pirates manager, former Astros manager, and, of course, former Pirate and longtime baseball man and comes to every spring training as a guest instructor.
And when he first came over as a bench coach.
And Cervelli on base for the second time. A walk and a solid single to center, 2 aboard.
For Jim Leyland, everybody was kind of like, I was anyway, a little like, oh, Bill Verdon. We knew of him because of his Pirate background and everything, but after he was coaching with us, as we see Cervelli line this pitch away the other way. After he was with her for a while, you find out, wow, what a wonderful man he is.
Yes, he is.
He's a great guy.
He's one of those guys that doesn't smile a whole lot, doesn't have a lot to say. But if you just kind of cut through a little bit, you find out he's just a gem.
That was a nice little piece of hitting there by Cervelli. Trying to go out and pull that pitch away. So often when the guys do that, there's your ground ball. How do you get a ground ball, fall behind in the count, and then have him try and pull a fastball away?
Yeah, get a little movement on a fastball that's well placed.
Get that hitter feeling confident to where he wants to pull something. He's in a fastball count. He can't wait to drive the ball and have him out there roll over on it. Of course, if you're that good, you probably wouldn't be 2-0 to begin with. It's always the little catch.
It's an easy game to talk about, a little tougher to play.
I've watched some of my old games.
Well, I can't even watch my stuff.
It's so embarrassing.
Yeah.
I see myself pitch. I'm like, man, what are you doing?
Yeah. I honest to goodness, some stuff will come up and I just turn my head. I can't even watch the stuff.
Alan Ashby and Bob Walk. This ball's popped up and an infield fly will be caught. So our friends from Root Sports Southwest know the voices of Alan Ashby and Bill Brown.
May I say, Roberto Hernandez, along with pitching well, did a nice job right there covering third base on a play that saw the shortstop and third baseman converge on a pop fly. One of those little things that'll be overlooked by almost everybody, but you want to make sure and do them well.
I was always told that just get your feet moving. Don't stand out there in the middle of the diamond and be a spectator.
There is a right spot to be, and he found himself there.
Neil Walker fly to center in the first inning. This is just his 16th at bat.
You know, I meant to ask you guys, and this inning would have probably figures to be a good one to do it. Josh Harrison, what a year last year, and there's no way you could have anticipated that was coming, was there?
No way.
Not at all. I did a radio interview, a pregame with him early in the season.
To right, and this will make it a one-run game as Walker reaches the boardwalk. His first home run of the spring, it's 4-3.
Ball didn't get very high. I'm not sure if the wind really did much with that one. He hit that one on the nose.
Yeah, when I see good things going on for the Pirates and check out the box score and the highlights, a lot of times Neil Walker finds his way in.
Neil Walker, he's always been one of our best hitters with guys on base. So, many times, if you could pick one guy to be at the plate, a crucial moment, somebody to drive in, Neil always seems to be cool and calm about it. Good RBI guy, and last year really broke out with the power. It started the year before in September. He went on a little bit of a September home run streak and was able to maintain it through the winter into last season. And he's one of the best hitting second basemen in the game now. I don't think anybody would argue with that.
Pirates once had a guy named Jose Bautista, and nobody thought anything or much of him. The Toronto Blue Jays, who I was working for at the time, picked him up, and it was one of those ho-hum deals, but kind of worked out. 54 homers later after one of those years.
It kind of worked out. 3-run homer for Neil Walker makes it a one-run game.
Welcome back. Spring training baseball on Root Sports. We go to the fourth. Astros Pirates 4-3. Astros on top. And talking about the Astros coaching staff, this spring training isn't just about new teammates bonding. It's also about the new coaches bonding together, as well as bonding with the players, getting a chance to talk with new hitting coach Dave Hudgens on just his philosophy and how you get to know your hitters. He said in the beginning he just kind of sits back, a lot of conversations, a lot of watching to see how the relationships will develop there. And then also Gary Pettis, the third base coach, talking to him today, he said, right now I'm trying to get guys to transition. In the beginning it's all about you at the plate, but now I want guys to start thinking more about situational hitting. How are we going to win? How can I make the team better? Interesting thoughts from the new coaches, guys.
Thank you, Julia. Julia Morales and Robbie Makowski, sideline reporters, as first pitch to VR is a ball outside.
Yeah, listening to Julia there, and she's always dead on the money. I wonder, is there anything really new in this game? Or is there different terminology sometimes?
Yeah, it's all of this.
Well, you sound like Bob Walk there, Alan Ashby.
Really?
He asks the exact same question almost every year.
No kidding.
No, it's true. It's the terminology that changes, though, right? Essentially.
Yeah, I really think so. This is not one of those games that you can maybe like the X's and O's of football. Although I've talked to a lot of football players that'll say, all this coach talk and everything is kind of out the window as far as they're concerned. But I think you can X and O it a lot more easily than you can baseball. You have to execute in baseball, bottom line.
Mm-hmm. It's what it's all about. It's that little battle that's constantly going on in the game between the pitcher and the hitter. I mean, that's the essential heart of this game. And
all the other stuff
X's and O's,
yeah,
they have their place, but really, it's you can have everything in the world planned out, and if the hitters and the pitchers don't execute what their jobs are, then it's all meaningless.
I find myself chuckling a lot of times at some of the things that get said about what I'm going to do this year and why it's going to make me a better player and all that sort of thing. And it's intriguing, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, that battle between pitcher and hitter, the defense behind you, how you run the bases,
all been the same forever.
Yep.
But every year there'll be some new buzzwords come in.
Yeah.
It'll be like this was something new that no one ever thought of. No, it's been thought of forever, but it was called something different.
Well, we used to hit behind the runner, and now it's situational hitting.
Yeah. Gonzalez fouls it off.
And there's nothing wrong with it, but I guess the point is it's not new, but it's things that you have to eventually figure out a way to get it done. And they're not easy until they become easy, and that's what the really good players have on their side.
Yeah, those are the kind of things that when guys really kind of start committing to that goes into the chemistry thing that you mentioned earlier. That's all part of it, where players stop thinking so much about their own personal back of the bubblegum card.
Mm-hmm. Runner takes off, and off the end of the bat, a little confusion as to who's going to pick it up, and everybody's safe. Gonzalez will get credit for an infield hit.
And there's one of those plays. I don't know. Somebody's going to say, well, the Pirates didn't execute on this play. But in reality, I think this was just a no-chance play. This is Bermuda Triangle.
Well, this is when you have that left-handed pitcher that is always going to be a little slow coming off. And in this case, Locke, he took a little step toward third in his follow-through, which makes him late getting off. And ideally, if it's a right-hander, he's going to scoop that ball up and win the race to first base.
That's that I got it, you take it play on the little dribbler, and just tough to execute.
Jeff Locke reaches his pitch limit, so Clint Hurdle takes the baseball from the Pirates starter, and we'll be back. 4-3, Houston leads it. Pirates and the Astros. It's a Grapefruit League game coming your way from McKechnie Field on St. Patty's Day. A lot of green everywhere. As the Pirates call on a non-roster invite, Diolis Guerra. His numbers last year in the minor leagues. Played at Rochester, the Twins organization. Two on, nobody out.
We're not used to a game like this. 4-3. After we're not even through through 3 innings.
And that's why when people are kind of panicking about the Pirate offense, it's not really fair when you think about how few at bats the guys that are going to be in the lineup every day have had.
It seems like all of our games have been 2-1.
Yeah. And the bulk of those games have been played by players that won't not only make the roster at the start of the spring, but very unlikely to be on the team at all this year.
Yeah, I looked at the Pirates' numbers. Good on the pitching side, not so strong on the hitting side. A lot of times that can mean the wind's been blowing in and nothing more.
Well, a lot of times, too, half of those at-bats we're looking at are guys that are going to be somewhere in the minor leagues this year. They're not even going to be in the big league team. At least the first half of spring training, after 5 innings, you get that big switch. And
so you get a team that starts out 10-1 in the spring. Are they really having a good spring, or does it mean that their minor league system is playing well?
Their double-A team's really doing a great job.
That happened a few years ago with the Pirates. They had some big late inning comeback wins in spring training.
It's because the veterans are always in there the last 3 innings, right?
Yeah, right. Exact opposite. The young minor leaguers.
No, it was like when McCutchen was coming up. And,
and Walker and Alvarez.
Harrison.
Yeah. Jake Marisnik pops this out of play.
Yeah, I think it can be that pointer toward maybe 2 or 3 years down the line a lot of times.
Yep.
Does it mean anything about this year? Maybe not. When you see some big team, the Cardinals, as you guys might look at things, having a rough start at the beginning of the spring, does it mean that you can look at it and say, maybe it's the beginning of the demise for the Cards?
Probably not.
Yep.
To center field, and Starling Marte going to set up for a throw. This could be fun.
Wow.
Under at second base, VR decides not to test
it. Good arm.
Yeah, that's not bad right there.
He can really play the outfield.
And I love when a guy that has a really good arm, and I can point to another guy that was a Pirate, Jose Bautista, great arm in right field, when he hits the cutoff man and does it right. And Marte right here does it right.
He is so talented.
Probably the best of the 3 outfielders, Marte, McCutchen, and Polanco.
Excellent base stealer.
And could see a lot more playing time in center field. They're hoping to give McCutchen some more days off this year.
So he's better than those numbers on the back of the baseball card, huh?
We are hoping that is the case. It looked like the second half of last year he really had the breakthrough. He's been one of those guys that will chase pitches out of the strike zone, like we were talking with, basically all young players when they come up. That's going to be one of the things that they have to try and get under control, and I think he's got that under control. He quit chasing so many bad breaking balls, got a feel for the strike zone, and really turned it on second half of the season with the bat. He's strong, he's got power. I expect him to have 20 home runs when the season's over this year. I really believe that he's capable of doing that, and I even kind of went on a radio show earlier, Greg. You'll remember this back in Pittsburgh, and they wanted me to make a bold prediction. Mine was that he'll go 20-50. He'll steal 50 bases and hit 20 home runs.
Really, bold to a degree, but you think about what he did the second half of last year. He ended up with 13 homers, and 2 years ago he stole 41 bases. So that's really not.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, downplay it, Greg.
Saying H.A. Burnett might be the comeback player of the year. Now that's
where's Bill?
Bold.
Can we get Bill back in here?
No, he'll be back.
We're going to have a brownie on the mic all game long.
The way it should be.
You know what? The Astros didn't have that guy that went 20-50, but they had 340-50 last year with Altuve, as he led the American League in stolen bases, hit 341. What a year.
there's a guy,
225 hits last year.
Alan, you were talking about Josh Harrison. Was that expected of him, the bust-out year that we saw when Altuve was coming up? Did you expect this kind of player?
No. But, to be fair, I think it was more predictable that Altuve was going to have a good year.
I can remember Dave Clark telling us that
watch this guy.
We have this guy in the minor leagues. It looks like
not very big.
Yeah, you're not going to be real impressed when you see him. But he goes, I think he's going to be a hitter. And
he's a unique hitter, too. He's not the guy that you go, wow, look at the bat speed on this guy. But what you come away with after watching not one game, but probably 20 games is, man, this guy can really handle the stick. And when he gets it hot, he'll put a pile of hits on you. And when he's not hot, he'll still get his hits.
225 hits last year for Jose Altuve as Robbie Grossman took a close pitch. 3-2. Grossman has doubled and singled.
This is what Robbie does. He takes a ton of close pitches, and a lot of times it'll bite him.
And he draws the walk to load the bases.
But he's also viewed as that guy that a lot of the new stylists in the game really like, because he does take a lot of pitches. He draws some walks. And passes the baton if that's what you're into.
Former Pirates minor leaguer involved in the Wandy Rodriguez deal 3 years ago.
Say also of Robbie, though, he kind of comes across as a smallish guy as a corner outfielder, but boy, he's put together.
I was going to say, he looks like a different person than when we saw him when he was in the minor leagues.
He has
for the Pirates.
Developed physically. Has a chance to be a good player.
Bases loaded for George Springer. And a tough play here. Cervelli wanted to get an out. He won't get anybody. Oops, a foul ball.
Did he
try
touch
to
the
grab
ball?
It and tag the runner? Now here comes A.J. Hinch.
I think we need some spring training slow motion here, guys.
We need someone to throw the red flag.
Yep.
Huh?
Yep.
Tom Hallion.
Boy, if this ball does not hit Cervelli, he has got some gifted tools.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But the way he reacted was like, in his mind, he thought, it went through his legs.
How about that?
That's the kind of player you guys need behind the plate. Well done.
He knew he hadn't touched it. I put it in his hand like almost showing the umpires, hey, I didn't touch this. I'm going to pick it up now. It's a foul ball.
Well, I'm hoping George Springer is actually thinking, good, I want another swing at this.
Now to play.
So I got a feeling Springer's going to be one of those hitters that the pitcher at every game is going to think about who's hitting behind him. And do I really need to throw this guy a strike in certain situations?
But also because he's so prone to the strikeout at this stage of his career, some pitchers will think, I can get up the ladder or I can use that slider down and away and I'll get him.
Kind of like, I'm going to make my pitches. If he shows some patience, then the heck with it. I'll go after the guy behind him. But I might be able to get out of this by him chasing balls like this.
Cervelli's a battler back there.
Yeah, he is.
He didn't exactly get down, but when it's all said and done, he got the job done. Yeah, I just continue to say, and I said it from the first time I saw George Springer, this could be one of the game's next great superstars.
Pirates wanted that one.
And a lot of those guys, have had that said about them through the years, and it never panned out. But the tools are there for that to take place for George. I'd hate to take a lot of pitches in that, kind of close range with a couple of strikes. A lot. I do think he can become more patient, but I don't want to see it go too far.
In the air to right, Polanco going back. Wynn taking it toward the wall and over his head. So the Astros will get a couple out of it as Springer doubles over the head of the right fielder Polanco, scoring Villar and Gonzalez.
May I say the wind played the large part in this one.
Yes, the wind did get a hold of this one and push it out there. But even still, though, you use that strength. That would have been, it should have been a routine sacrifice fly. But watch where the pitch was, and he's just kind of reaching for it. And still strong enough to where he would have had that ball out there far enough to score the run in.
Springer, you'll see in the stats, has a couple of spring home runs. They both came in one game, both to right field with the wind blowing in. And that's the kind of pop this guy has.
A couple of doubles for Springer. 6-3 Astros. Infield in all the way around here as Carter takes a strike.
That's one of those days where I think George would tell you honestly he hasn't hit a ball well yet, but does have the 2 doubles. Then he'll have another day where he hits 3 line drives and gets nothing.
And watching the replay of that, Polanco must have been fooled by that funny reaching swing. As it really, the ball was up high enough and landed just on the warning track. That ball's got to be caught.
Pitcher talk 101.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And if you care about the spring training numbers for Jeff Locke, 3+ innings, 7 hits, 6 runs, a walk and 3 strikeouts. And he gave up the home run to Jason Castro, who's on deck.
So I'd be curious to talk to a Bob Walk and see what you actually saw outside of those numbers today for Locke.
Well, I was right along with you. I thought that as I said earlier, he really is a guy that kind of needs to live on the edges a little bit and get some calls, and he didn't get any favors today. Did
really
not get the borderline call strikes, and I think that in his short career with us, when he has to pitch in the heart of the strike zone, he can have a hard time.
And this line down the line and left by Carter. And this brings home a couple more. Carter into second base with a 2-run double. 8-3 Astros.
Well, that looked like a pitch up in the zone, hit me hard kind of a pitch. And Chris Carter again, who hasn't had the strongest spring, but he's starting to break out. He just gets the high crush me heater, and he does that.
Belt high center of the plate.
And that's where you look at a game and you say, the numbers don't mean anything, but you're not making the pitches right here.
Carlos Correa is going to pinch run for Carter.
Talk about young guys who can become superstars. Carlos Correa, another one of the former number 1 pick, and man, you watch this guy take batting practice, take infield, take whatever it may be, playing a ball game. This guy is, it would seem, destined to become great.
Now the Astros, watching him and looking at him and hearing you talk, it's kind of like
pieces in place, don't they?
It's like looking maybe where the Pirates were, say, 2 years ago. But American League West, a tough division too to have to kind of fight to the top of.
It's been that, the Angels are going to spend.
Yeah.
The Rangers have been in that ballpark. Of course, they've lost Darvish now this year, and they had a terrible year last year.
Seattle spends money.
They have been spending money, and they actually got, I think, maybe money's worth out of Cano last year. He was fantastic, and they're trying to add more pieces to that puzzle. But you do, it would seem, have to put quite a team together to contend in the West.
Well, the A's seem to figure it out most often.
Regardless
I never know how.
What names get plugged in the off season, they find a way. I don't know if it's that ballpark. You get a ballpark that doesn't yield a lot of long balls and cool evenings. I don't know how much that plays into pitchers.
Castro toward the right center gap, and that gets past Marte. So Correa scores, and it is 9-3. And if Deolis Guerra had any hopes of making the club out of spring training, this might be his last opportunity, as guys are going to get more chances.
One of the harder hit balls of the day, and again, it's a pitch that is not located well. Cervelli sitting on the outside corner, and he got this one down better, but it was still right in the center of the plate.
If the Astros are going to meet expectations this year, and the expectations are much higher than they've been in recent years, Castro's going to need a big year like this.
New pitcher coming on for the Pirates. Astros lead 9-3.
for the Pirates. Astros lead this one right now in the fourth, 9-3. Jason Castro on second right now, having a nice day at the plate in his last two bats, getting that first homer out of the way. He's hoping 2015 looks a lot more like 2013, that All-Star season. 2014 just wasn't what he wanted. 222 the batting average in a career high 126 games. Really struggled at the plate offensively. But guys, this offseason took a different approach. Actually started hitting a lot earlier than he did the year before. If you remember that year before, he went back to Stanford and got his degree, graduated. But this time around wanted to do something to help him offensively, and he's feeling much better as well, guys.
Castro. Well, does that say that if you want to have a big year, don't go back and graduate from college?
You know, I think everybody is their own individual, and what works for somebody might not work for somebody else. You never know.
Well, Josh Harrison, a fabulous play off the bat of Matt Dominguez.
Now that's the Josh we know. There are a couple of plays that maybe earlier I thought he was going to make, and then he pulls this one off.
You know what? That diving play is tough for any third baseman. Watch how quick he gets back to his feet and makes the throw, and the margin of the out at first base. That is amazing.
That was a heck of a play. I mean, that's the J.Hay we saw last year most of the time. And you know what's surprising about it? It wasn't always at third. He was coming, no matter where they put him out there.
It was almost like he was the best fielder in any position.
Yeah, wherever he was coming up with these crazy defensive plays. It was a dream season for him, really was.
You know, to Julia's point again, and of course I was just making light of what can be the case a lot of times. But I think Astros people are hoping that the work Castro put in this past season turns it back around. 2 years ago, he was fantastic with the bat.
To right field, Polanco will retire Singleton. Jeremy Bleich, a non-roster invite, gets 2 outs thanks in large part to the great play by Harrison. 9-3 Astros. At McKechnie Field, the Astros out in front of the Pirates on this St. Patrick's Day, going to the bottom of the fourth inning. Split broadcast, Root Sports Southwest and Root Sports Pittsburgh, along with Alan Ashby and Bob Walk. Greg Brown will bring Bill Brown in next inning. And fun to see you guys again. Oh, I'm sure you guys talked about this the first couple innings. We miss playing the Astros.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. We told them that I had favorite restaurants and stuff we don't get to go to anymore.
Yeah.
It really, something that I've always done forever, to go to Houston. I played in the Western Division for a while, and then when I became an announcer, we all got put into the Central together, and yeah, I definitely miss it.
When you're giving scores at the end of ball games, of course on TV you don't do that a lot, but I think it's still hard to not think of the Astros as a National League club.
Difficult, very difficult for us.
I'll go as far as to say I miss the Astrodome.
Yeah.
That was like,
you're a pitcher. If you had been,
yeah, you're right about that. Yeah. I loved going to the Astrodome.
Of course, you guys back in the day when I played, the Pirates had hitters who didn't care what canyon it was that they were going to. They were going to find a way to hit it out.
New pitcher Alex White after Roberto Hernandez went the first 3.
You had a lot of teams that would build their clubs to where they played. If you were on AstroTurf in a big ballpark, you built around speed, defense, great pitching.
Well, that's where the Astros were back in the Astrodome days. And, of course, things can change. You can't always maintain the great pitching and defense, so you try to. Of course, if you could do it the way you'd like, you'd have great hitting, defense, pitching would be stellar. You'd have a great bullpen if you ever happen to have the need.
Alan Ashby caught a lot of those great pitchers with the Houston Astros.
Nolan Ryan, J.R. Richard before he went down. Don Sutton came through. Joe Niekro was one of the terrific pitchers, and I don't think got the credit that he deserved with his knuckleball. There were just it was kind of legion. Mike Scott came through and was one of the no-hitters I was fortunate to be able to catch, and it was phenomenal to go to the ballpark sometimes and see what was going to happen with the pitching.
That must have been something special to catch those guys, huh?
Oh, it truly was. Of course, I was always focused on the fact that I was probably 0 for 15 in that stretch. And, you know, you all have your issues that you're dealing with. And I don't care, Bob. Everybody says it's all about the ring. And it is. Ultimately, you want to win and get it done, and that's what makes it fun. But, boy, you have to take care of your own business, or else you're not going to be in the business long.
And another thing about that being a team player, if you're taking care of your business and hitting 3-something, you're a pretty good team player. You know?
Yeah,
I mean,
you're viewed as the guy everybody wants to play with, even if you haven't talked to anybody in a month.
Yeah, exactly. It does come down to a lot of what happens between the chalk lines, whether a guy's a good team player or not.
Third base, Dominguez takes care of Mercer.
You know, you love playing with that guy that you're pitching. It's a tight ball game. You're down a run. He comes up late in the ball game with a couple of guys on base, and he gaps one. That's a great team player.
Occasionally, you have that guy that is the best, greatest teammate you ever had, and he also is, you know, a fantastic player. The guy, when people ask me about, you know, a combination like that, I always talk about Dale Murphy with the Braves, of being just a phenomenal human being, and for a few years there, you know, one of the absolute best players in all of baseball.
2-time MVP in that span.
He was fantastic, and a stellar teammate, a stellar man. Still get to see him every now and then. You'll see him in the broadcast booth in Atlanta.
Oh yeah,
he's kind of trying to get his hand back in a little bit.
Yeah, Dale was a good buddy of mine.
He certainly hasn't changed. You talk to him now, he's just the same as ever. Just what could he do for you?
Of course, you guys had Bob Horner, and it didn't hurt having his bat in the order, and
yeah,
and on and on.
He could certainly hit some home runs. I think he's one of the few guys who hit 4 in a game.
Yes,
I believe.
Yeah, you're right.
Never played a game in the minor leagues, right from Arizona State, I think.
I think Reggie Jackson was another Sun Devil who turned that trick.
Arizona State has some players come through that organization.
Was Rick Monday an Arizona Stater? Not so, huh?
Well, Greg,
who's that now? I'm sorry.
Hey, pay attention to what we're
sorry.
saying. That's anything else. No, this is how the whole season is for me.
So
I'm talking,
I drift into,
and he's never paying attention.
I'm daydreaming.
Never paying attention.
Well, I feel for you, Bob.
Yeah.
It's got to be a tough year.
Yeah, it is. It's very difficult. It is tough. Yeah. I admit it.
I was hoping this was a 1-2-3 inning and get Bill Brown back in here.
He doesn't come to. You got another inning with me yet, and then the 8th and the 9th. I'm coming back later.
Oh well, then let's have a rally. If you got to be here, we might as well score some runs.
Andrew Lambeau to the plate. Yeah, this is the way it goes in this booth.
It's a tough gig, isn't it?
It is a tough gig.
I don't know. Now I'm totally confused about Rick Monday, but he was one of those number ones.
Was he a USC man?
Yes.
Was he?
I'm going with it.
You're going with
Wow.
I don't know. I don't know.
Wow.
I have no
That's
idea.
That's terrible for you to just drop
I mean,
right
No,
on
it
the
isn't.
line
No,
like
come
that.
on. That's not terrible.
Hey, Greg's going to look it up. See, this is my goal all the time. I'll throw stuff out there.
And I won't do it for him. But I'll do it for Alan
And then I
Ashby.
watch him look it up.
I will not do it for Walk.
And then it always brings a smile to my face. I think to myself, I got him.
That's a tidy little phone you have there.
Arizona State was Monday,
Very
according
good.
to the truck.
Very good.
So you guys...
Barry Bonds, Arizona State, right?
Yeah.
You know who else went there? That I happened to look them up recently. I don't know why. I saw Jim Palmer's name as an alum from
Really?
Arizona State. I had no idea.
Wouldn't have guessed
Man.
that. Well, there have been some stars. I mean, that's about as big a name as you can pull out.
Yeah. One and two on Andrew Lambeau.
It's Albano, yeah, also on that list. Bill Buckner. Wow. Yeah, Dustin Pedroia. Andre Ethier, we're getting fed from the
No, don't
the
tell
truck.
him that.
Bob
we're coming
never-
to you.
Bob
This is
never
off the
gives
top
that
of our
secret.
head.
Actually,
This
I was
stuff-
watching over your shoulder, Bob, as you were writing the names down.
Yeah.
It's always off the
Nice
top
job.
of my head
Off the
when I
top
come
of
up
his
with
head
this
all the
stuff.
Could you have scouted Dustin Pedroia and come away saying, we need to draft this guy?
Hard to imagine you could. There's a fly ball toward the line and left hangs up for Springer. Oh, and it's a fair ball off his glove. Lambeau will head to third, and that ball's going to get wedged, so it'll be a double for Lambeau as Springer went a long way.
Last year watching George Springer, he was a highlight reel in so many aspects of the game. But defensively, I never saw a ball that was in his vicinity that he didn't catch. And so I hope this is just a spring training thing right here for George.
Well, that would have been an awfully tough catch. He did have it in the glove, just when he went sliding, it popped out.
Boy, it's scary when any time, regular season or otherwise, but spring training, you see one of those guys you need. And then he has to make a sliding play running toward a wall. And he pulled a quad muscle last year and missed a couple of months.
You know, it's tough for the guys to back off, too. They're not thinking about that. I'm sure everybody in the dugout was saying, stop, don't try to catch it, let it go.
Well, he's one of those guys that I think, at least from what I've heard, has been possibly urged to back off a little bit. You hate to say that to anybody, but man, he's just one of those all-out guys.
Pirates had someone a few years ago, Bob. Do you remember who that was out in like left field? Somebody diving for a ball during a spring training game. The Pirates told him and everybody else quit it.
That does sound familiar.
And Harrison is hit by the pitch. Following the double by Lambeau, it loads the bases.
By the way, I don't want anybody saying that I said that Dustin Pedroia wasn't a great player, because he is.
Oh, I know what you mean.
That
You
little
look
body
at it,
guy.
you would never guess.
Yeah, this is a guy we've got to have. Well, how big is he? Okay, and you get into that, and you think,
Altuve. We just talked about Jose Altuve, right?
Of course, he's one of those international players, and you can take your shot. But first round, are we going to go after Dustin Pedroia?
Yep.
And what a great player he's turned into.
Loaded now for Cervelli, facing Alex White. Cervelli has walked and singled. And they shift on him. It'll be interesting to see what the book is on Cervelli.
I wonder, in terms of drafting, acquiring players, if this game has always been about that big-bodied guy that projects out to, you know, the eights that the scouts deal with and all that goes with it, or that aspect that gets overlooked a bit. Can he actually play the game?
Yeah, I think they're always going to err to getting that big. Whatever it is, it's impressive about a guy that has a tremendous speed, or somebody can throw 98 miles an hour. That's always going to be looked at. But everything has become so digital. that I think, yeah, this guy knows what he's all about. He can play the game. Is even becoming more rare for someone to stand up and really put their name on the line and say, I want this guy. If there's not something there that can be in a computer software program to back it up.
Cervelli rolls to the shortstop. And a scoreless inning for Alex White. Pirates leave them loaded. 9-3, Houston. And he has been playing in spring training with the Pirates, mainly at shortstop. They brought him directly from the Korean Baseball Organization. And what a year last season. 40 homers, 117 RBIs for the Nexen Heroes. OPS over 1,000, a .356 batting average. And Jung-Ho Gong now takes over at third base for Josh Harrison. He's started a handful of games at short this spring. They're easing him over into third. Eventually, he'll see some playing time over at second.
And that playing time, I think, is going to depend on how close he can come to those home run numbers we just saw up on the screen. There's nothing in this game like instant offense, and if he can show that he can get the ball over the fence with any kind of regularity, then they'll find a way to put him in that lineup more often than not.
Batting practice is only worth what you want it to be, but I watched him take BP today, and he's got some pop. There's no question.
There's Jared Hughes. Another fine season last year for Hughes.
Very interesting to watch maybe the first month and a half of the regular season and see how he is against Major League pitching.
Ball one.
Does Gong figure to be in the lineup somewhere on a daily basis?
No, not to start. I mean, that's kind of where it gets back to his bat. I mean, you have Harrison at third. Mercer, Walker, I mean, there's really no place for him right now. Everything's all set. But he'll be spelling all of those guys, maybe once a week.
And to Mercer. One out.
So it's going to be kind of up to him to show what he can do. And then when we get into the June and July, I think that's where his playing time will rest on that bat of his, and hopefully it's a big one.
Josh Harrison started at third. Now Gong over there, and the batter Marwin Gonzalez. Fourth pitcher to work today for Pittsburgh. Jared Hughes. Saw the numbers from last year. Another fine season for the big righty. He figures to be part of the bullpen on the club breaks camp. Just a couple of jobs available, it would appear, on the Pirates pitching staff.
For maybe, you can make an argument for 4 different guys, I think, to get those 2 spots. And
Marwin Gonzalez here at the plate for the Astros is one of those guys that really should lock up a backup infield position, can play well anywhere you want to insert him, a switch hitter, works hard, and that's a tough role to fill and be successful at, but he was all of that last year.
You have to really, I think, buy into it and know that's going to be your role and have the right attitude.
Tough for guys that played every day in the minor leagues, isn't it, to come to the big leagues and and all of a sudden you're faced with the idea that you may make the club, but you're not going to play every day, but you're going to be in the big leagues.
Utility guys don't come to the big leagues.
Yeah.
And so you have to acquiesce and learn how to get it done. And how many times through the years have you heard a guy complaining on the bench, grumbling, well, how do they expect me to do anything when I haven't played in a period of time? And my comment always used to be, and it happened to me, you better be ready when the opportunity comes. It's either that or see ya.
I think that the great example of that is Josh Harrison last year. I mean, he was our extra guy, 25th guy on the roster. He got his opportunity last year and never looked back. And that can be for everybody. But I've always said bench guys, I think, should be some of your older players. You know, your 31, 32-year-old guys that have now accepted, okay, I'm not ever going to be an everyday player at this, but I know the role. I can help as a pinch hitter. I can go in and I can play once a week. And
you're hoping a guy like Corey Hart's going to be that type of player. 6-4-3 double play. And Jared Hughes puts a scoreless top of the fifth on the board. Halfway through at 9-3, Astros. Day. So the gear that's available at the Pirates team store here at McKechnie Field. Both teams, of course, wearing the green caps, the green bases. And again, we're sharing this telecast with our friends at Root Sports Southwest, along with Alan Ashby and Bob Walk, Greg Brown, and Bill Brown will be here. Bob, just so you know, next half inning. We've got a half inning left with this Brown.
Go Brownie.
Yeah. Strike is called on Polanco. VR in center field.
This is actually my second time ever working with Bill Brown.
You worked with Bill Brown where before?
We did it was either, I think it was an Open together years and years ago in Pittsburgh. Somebody came up with the idea that let's have one announcer from one team and one announcer from the other team do an Open for the game.
You've talked about that ever since.
That's when I realized what it was like to work with a professional.
Yep. That's a fact. He's talked about that for several years. Man,
now
I got the wrong Brown.
That's analysis for you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Actually, Veteran Pirate fans remember Bill Brown many years ago doing some games on the old HSE. Shift on Polanco.
So much part of the game now, the shift.
Yeah, we saw the ball go right through the straight up second base spot earlier in the ball game with the shift on. And there are a lot of people saying that it's the reason for batting averages dropping. Last year was not a big year. You look around Major League Baseball, the numbers, on base percentage and the batting average overall, not real good. I was really surprised. I don't know if you guys were, that like on base percentage, I don't know the exact number right now, but I want to say it was around 317, 316, whereas some years ago it was usually around the 330 mark.
What are your thoughts on the shifting and the offense these days?
Boy, it's great when it works, and it sure is frustrating when it doesn't.
I'm always surprised when more guys don't take advantage of it. Somebody with like a Polanco's speed, he's a great bunter, and there's a base hit, and he could almost walk down if he just like a little push bunt toward third base there.
Furthermore, if you put it on the barrel and pop it, and it rolls on past the grass, you got yourself a double.
Yeah, especially you run like him.
Is there something wrong with doing that in today's game?
I don't know. We very rarely see it, and it has to be the answer. If they want, if you're as a hitter, you don't want three guys on the same side of the field, then do something about it.
Well, my thought has been, along with that, because that seems so simple, is in batting practice, when are we going to start seeing teams with all the situational hitting say, shift is on, and now you hit one through the other side, or you push a bunt through that side? Right. Well, what's wrong with that? I think it's really easy to counteract the shift, personally. And some guys, David Ortiz had the shift on him all the time, and I've seen David Ortiz bunt for the hit. He wasn't too proud to drop one down.
No, you have to look at the game situation, and in this instance, 9-3, 2 outs, but you have speed. You're kind of a base stealer guy, so you can turn that bunt base hit into a double, and you're not going to hit a 5-run home run.
And now he takes off for second. He gets that stolen base, so he's there with nobody out in a 9-3 game.
So what do you hear in the dugout when you're down 9-3 in the fifth inning? All right, guys, let's go. Let's put some innings together, and that means you're going to score one or two a couple of times and try to claw back in the game. You start that by getting a base runner.
You can't get it all back at once. Maybe when you get to the last couple innings, now it's like you're forced to play for nothing but the big inning.
Walker homered off the starter Hernandez in the third, now facing Alex White.
There's a lot of times, too, that you'll see a team that just because they look like they're trying to play for one run, it seems to turn into something else. You see somebody sacrifice early in a game, somebody the third, and now the pitcher starts getting a little defensive. He's trying to get a strikeout. He doesn't want that early run to score. Now he ends up walking somebody, and they go on to now it's first and third. Somebody hits a gap, and before you know it, you were playing for one run. There's three up on the scoreboard.
I wanted to ask you, Bob, about the shift scenario, and you're on the hill, and a ball goes through the infield. And I was around so many pitchers that would grumble about the fact that the shift had enabled the base hit. Of course, we see things as human beings, maybe as they fit us, but when the play is made by the shift, it's expected, and then when the ball goes through, it shouldn't have happened. But how did it impact you when guys were out of position?
It really didn't make much difference to me. I really can't recall getting upset at that.
Look at this, a fly ball. Three fielders converge. Drops out of the glove. Second and third.
Tough play to make.
Yeah, there's the case of Jonathan Villar, who was an infielder, and he was a gifted shortstop when he came to the big leagues a couple of years ago. Now he's in center field, Does he get a good enough jump on this play?
He broke back.
Yeah.
He took 2 steps back.
And that sets up everything. It forces your second baseman, Marwin Gonzalez, to try to make the play at the last instant in the tough sun and the wind in spring training. Marwin generally would make that play. But I think it really comes down to your center fielder getting to a play that you generally will see him there on.
I wonder what the shift had any impact
on
a pop fly like that.
Yeah.
He's not having to run so far before he makes that lunge at the ball, perhaps. But I get what you're saying. I have seen pitchers also get. I know that there was a couple situations 2 years ago where we saw A.J. Burnett give up some ground balls to the infield where if you were been playing straight up, it would have been routine out. And you could see from his actions out on the mound that he wasn't pleased with that. And so, some guys, they have strong feelings themselves where the players should be playing out there. I played 1 year with Gaylord Perry in Atlanta, and he was a guy that had strong feelings where he wanted even the outfielders to be stationed. And some pitchers, that's not something they want to think about. That's somebody else's job.
I don't know what you got out of playing with Gaylord. I played with him some period of time in my early years coming to the big leagues, and he probably had as much impact on me as a young catcher as anybody else I saw. And I still talk about Gaylord because he was so precise in his in-between pitching days routine in terms of where he threw pitches. It had to be, and in between innings on a game he was pitching, it had to be 2 on one corner and 2 on the next corner and back and forth, and he would accept nothing less. I found that he had good stuff. He had better stuff than most people thought, but I thought the greatest quality he had was that drive that accepted nothing less than as close to perfection as you could come up with in this game.
Yeah, I played with him a little later in his career where his stuff was starting to back off a little bit, but he was way more than the spitter, which is what everyone always talked about. Yeah. He really had this great, fierce competitor inside of him, and was a thinker out on the mound. I mean, he really knew what was going on, and he would dissect what the hitter was trying to do, and he could go out there and throw pitches and counteract that. But everybody was always so, where's he touching? What's he doing?
And he wanted people to think about
absolutely.
That was part of his game.
He played into it. It was like a
mind
stick.
Yeah.
Hey.
I played with him for a period of time and a good period of time where he threw no spitters. But he still wanted everybody to think he was throwing it. Yeah.
He did show me how to hide it, though, and where to put it.
He did that. He gave you good tips.
He knew how to do it if he wanted to.
Did it involve the trainer? That's all I want to know.
It could have, yeah. It involved the back of his thumb a lot.
Oh, well, it's actually different than...
Well, he probably evolved over the years.
Yeah. Well, he had quite a routine, and guys do. You played with... Gosh, I don't want to throw names out there, but you played with a guy who was a good right-handed pitcher who's really been a good golfer through the years. That
Rick Rode?
I don't know. I think
he's talking about.
I thought you were wondering who it was.
He's talking about.
I was trying to help this time, and I should have backed off. You should have just nodded.
No, he's talking about somebody whose name hangs in the old top of the. Well, Minute Maid now.
It's really up to you guys, whatever you want to think. But I heard another player holler out to this guy and say,
I could look at the ball and I knew who was pitching on the mound.
Yes. Well, no, I'm not talking about him. But I know who you're talking about. But there was this other player, a little predating that guy you're talking about, accusing.
No, I'm not accused. I just think of golfers. I was just trying to help.
No, but I heard another player who was notorious for having people call him out, but he hollered out at this particular guy saying, while looking at the baseball, saying, "You give cheaters a bad name," which I thought was one of the great lines I had heard.
Got to try and get an edge.
Well, they used to always say, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And
line drive. What a play there by Dominguez. Robbing Marte of extra bases.
Nice young man and a gifted third baseman defensively, despite the fact he doesn't have that athletic ability with the feet. But he really plays a strong third base and power hitter. Struggled with the bat last year and battling now to earn that third base job.
Fine play. That ball heading down into the corner for extra bases. Would have perhaps got the Pirates back into this one.
And Alvarez lifts one to left. Well, Polanco will tag and score, make it 9-4. Alvarez 1 for 2 with a sac fly in this game. Just 14 spring training at bats.
So did you have a good at bat in the spring when with one out and a couple of runners at second and third and you're down 6 runs and you hit a sacrifice fly? Was that a good at bat? I don't know. I don't know how you evaluate this stuff.
I
Does
guess
it depend on what you're trying to do personally?
It depends your point of view, you know, and what your station is on the team, and you know, what maybe you're expecting to do.
You'll get high fives as you go back to the dugout.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm sure that he got a lot of high fives for the sacrifice fly. Now, during a regular season,
that was my question. Might his approach change during the regular season? Is he trying to do something here from an individual standpoint? Well, that has nothing to do with the score.
The one thing, he hangs a run on the board in the 5th inning and draws his team closer, and I think that's crucial.
Fly ball to right. Pirates get 1.
It's a very interesting question.
That's Bill Brown, the good Brown. He's coming in.
We'll talk to Bill about it.
Yeah. He'll know.
Come back. Game. Oh, sorry, Brownie. I tried to jump in on your feed right there. Coming back here for the 6th inning and a 9-4 Astros lead. Bill Brown back in the booth now. And, boy, we've talked a lot about you while you were gone.
I was going to ask you, what have I missed?
Well, you missed the big question. Does a guy have a good at bat in the spring when you're down 6 runs and you come up with a 1-out sac fly to drive in a run right there? Was that a good at bat?
You guys are tackling all the urgent questions of the spring. Yes, you're going deep.
Oh, you can really come at that with a lot of different answers depending on, you know, what your job is on the team and you know, what it is you're trying to work on doing.
Isn't that a good point? Yeah.
So you never really. It really is hard sometimes to figure out you know, what is good and what's bad in spring training. A lot of people will ask, you know, what. And you see Holcomb out there on the mound, one of our shorter players.
Is he 6'9", Bob?
Yes, he is. All of 6'9". But every player that you see has a different job, a different goal for spring training. Some guys desperate to make a team, and they come here all about getting outs or getting hits right away like it's a regular season. guys like McCutchen who are taking it very slow and are really looking at the last maybe 2 weeks to turn it on and get ready. So it's all different. Depends on who you are and what position you're in as far as how comfortable you are going north.
LJ Hall's caught looking. Let's go to Robbie. He has Neil Walker.
Yeah, Neil Walker, how's the mood different? You've been here a while, came up with this franchise, 2 playoff appearances in a row. How's the spring training different than the past you've experienced?
Well, I think first and foremost, there's less kind of turnover as far as the roster is concerned each year. Over the last several years, you've seen a lot of different guys in the clubhouse, and this year there's not many new faces. So, and that's a good sign for the organization. And guys are getting comfortable. There's not many open spots, and that's a good thing in my opinion, especially for starting pitchers and for the position players. They're able to kind of ease into the season, get themselves prepared, and get to work when necessary.
How does that help breed more confidence as you head in, knowing that most of this roster is set?
Yeah, it's really a focus on on getting your work in, getting ready, and when those last couple weeks of spring training come around, kind of turning it up and getting more of a game focus. And so obviously our goal is to win, but at the same time our focus is on opening day in Cincinnati. But like I said, it's a good time of year, good to break off the rust and kind of focus on the the aspects of your game.
2 questions people ask: 1, can Josh Harrison keep it up? Number 2, how will Pedro Alvarez feel? How will he make the transition to first base? Why are you confident in both those guys?
Well, I've always said that Josh is a guy that he has a knack for finding the barrel, and when you do that, and you have the speed he has, and you're able to, work counts and understand the game, the sky's the limit. And I don't foresee that being, something that's going to be extremely difficult for him, because on most occasions he's hitting the ball hard almost every time he's up there. So, and Pedro, he just needs to get spring training work at first base. That's the most important thing. He can take as many ground balls as he wants, but getting that game speed type of work at first base and turning double play and working around the bag, and he'll be perfectly fine.
Well, Neil, we're definitely sorry. We're not sorry for stopping you. Now, thanks for the time.
Thanks, Rob.
Guys.
Thank you, sir. Carlos Correa, the batter. He had quite a year last year, Ash, at Lancaster, before he broke his leg, sliding into third base, and said he had the normal, healthy winter, having improved so much after that surgery, and he is one of the top prospects in baseball. Neil Walker.
We were talking about Carlos Correa and what he brings right now. He's not likely to make the Major League Ball Club. Coming out of the spring, I think I would say I'll be surprised if we don't see him at some point on the season. But as much as George Springer has ability to become a superstar, I think Carlos Correa is right in that very same conversation. That's a lot to lay on a guy. I don't know if it bothers a guy that has the kind of tools that these 2 players
do you think
have.
Correa will start the year at AAA then, as far as where he'll be in the minor leagues, or will he go as far as AA? Or
I think it'll be double A. Bob. That's what we're looking at anyway, Corpus Christi.
Because he missed so much of last year, I think AA is probably in the offing. But I think that if he starts out well, that he'll quickly find AAA and then kind of justify all the needs that are deemed to be there for young players today.
Right.
He's a special athlete. And puts this one out into right field, and it soars over, and that will get out of here for a Carlos Correa opposite field home run.
Didn't think that was a home run off the bat.
No. A little flick of the wrist, and it goes out to right field, 10-4.
He's a big kid, and when you look at him, he's starting to fill in already from the first time I saw him. Last year, looking at him, I kept thinking Alex Rodriguez in his early years, kind of a tall, thin infielder, but he's filling in, and it's showing in the pop in the bat.
And this was another one of those balls that really went all that high to where the wind played a big deal. That ball was driven out the other way.
Yes, it was. Backdoor breaker, good for a strike to Castro. Here's a look.
Yeah, I always find myself asking when a guy like this comes on the scene in the spring, and always acknowledging spring training doesn't really mean a lot for a lot of guys. For some guys, it can mean a lot. But what does it mean when you're looking at a guy like Carlos Correa and what he can project to mean for a team? Yeah, it's hard to not have him on a big league club when he's better than the other guys.
That's his first spring home run this year.
I think we went through that a little bit with McCutchen a few years ago. That he would come to spring training. He's okay. He's not going to be on the team, and he's going to start the season at Double-A, and then, but in your mind you're thinking, wow, he's our best player. But
yes.
Yeah, you can't rush those guys.
Sean Rodriguez catches that liner at the bat of Castro, and the Correa homer makes it 10-4 Houston. It's an awfully big year for fans of Craig Biggio and the Houston Astros, the all-time leader in all those categories for the Astros, going into the Hall of Fame in late July. First ever Houston player, 27th member of the 3,000 hit club. He is here in spring training right now for a few days, and those are various categories. Leadoff homers, 53, the all-time National League leader.
What a player in every aspect, and he, along with Jeff Bagwell, the guys that they were the Houston Astros. And I think every player that came to play on that team just simply looked at those two guys and figured that's the way you play the game.
You're so fortunate when you can have players like that, going back to the Dale Murphy conversation, that not only can do it, on the stat sheet, but also do it, as men in the clubhouse and examples of the way it should be done.
Decker grounding out to second base, and we go to Julia.
Thanks. I'm with George, just leaving the game here. And George, a couple knocks today, scoring some guys. But how do you feel? How's the swing feel at this point in spring?
Good. It's obviously still early, but I feel good and starting to slow things down for me, and just going out to hit from there.
You're getting a lot of playing time, especially in right now. AJ Hinch, you've been saying he's playing you. He's wearing you out a little bit, but how do you feel like you're handling that?
Good. I like to play every day. I'm going to be out there, and I can handle it. So it's just kind of one of those things where he puts me out there, I'm going to play.
What's the competition like? That's the big word this spring training for the Astros.
It's fun. There's some guys who are stepping up and showing some skills out there, and it's just I know the whole team is having some fun with it.
What's important for you during spring training? Is it just to get in a routine as far as hitting as well? What do you like to do?
Just slow everything down. Just completely just square up the ball and just have a good at bat, and then obviously you will want to have some quality of results out of that, but just slow everything down and play from there.
I know Astros fans are really looking forward to having you back. I know you're probably really excited to be on the field as well, but health-wise, how long have you been 100%, and how good do you feel now?
I feel good. He obviously, obviously health is an issue, but I'm 100%, and enjoying being out there again.
We'd like to hear 100% because you don't play anything less, right?
Absolutely.
Thanks for the time, George.
No problem. Thank you.
Guys, back to you.
Thanks, Julia. A walk to Jung-Ho Gong puts him at first base. There's the throw to first behind him, and he gets back as Dan Straley's taken over on the mound. And he's another of those contenders for the number 5 starter. Roberto Hernandez started this game, and now Straley.
Pretty good job getting that ball to first base quickly.
Tyler Heineman in the game as a catcher.
The Astros have got some nice catching. But I think really bottom line, if they're going to be the team that starts to play 500 or better this year, they're truly counting on Jason Castro. And you saw his bat today as a good reason why. They've got a young right-handed hitting catcher, Max Stassi, who came over from the Oakland A's that a lot of people have had high hopes on, and he's looked really good on the spring. You know, you're always, as a general manager, kind of juggling you want your guys to do well because it helps your ball club, but it also helps your chance to acquire other players if you need to make a deal.
Corey Hart's the batter. This one gets away from Heineman and gone down to second base.
Well, there's the age-old saying about you can't have enough pitching, and thinking that catching position, you could pretty much say that about the catcher's job too. It's so tough to get through a year for a catcher without having to get dinged up and miss some time. You got to have some plan Bs and maybe even a plan C back there.
You know, I will say of Jason Castro in recent seasons now, he's starting to prove that he can be a durable guy that can do the daily duties.
So Corey Hart, Bob, figures to be a platoon guy at first base, perhaps, in the Pirates scheme of things.
I mean, I think that's still going to be worked out. You're not sure exactly if it's going to be a platoon or not. 2 years ago, Alvarez led the National League in home runs. If that's the kind of hitter he's going to be, then you probably let him play. But if you look at Pedro's numbers against lefties, they're not good. You don't like them, so maybe it'll be a platoon pretty much to begin with to see what Alvarez is going to do. And maybe see what Corey Hart's going to do. It wasn't all that long ago. He was a pretty feared middle of the lineup type hitter.
Yes.
In his Milwaukee days.
He did have some good years for the Brewers. He was with Seattle last year. Back in 2010, he was an all-star, 31 homers, 102 runs batted in for the Brewers.
If his legs are healthy and he gets back into that kind of form, he'll hit his way into that lineup somewhere.
The Astros have made a lot of changes, of course, at this stage of the game, and Nolan Fontana's in the game at second base. There's some other changes as well. Dan Johnson's at first. We'll take you around for a look with Gregorio Petit at shortstop. Colin Moran's the third baseman now with Preston Tucker at right. And then you see the outfield alignment.
Who did Robbie Grossman make mad today so that he has to play the whole game?
Well, he got a showcase game coming back to Pirate City.
Yeah, looking out toward left field. Even we're confused on that. It's not Robbie out there anymore. So Robbie's out somewhere enjoying whatever you do once you're out of the big league game.
That's why this wins and losses so meaningless. It's always two different teams that play the game.
Boy, you're right about that.
Well, actually 4 different teams.
Yeah. Cervelli with the foul ball. You know, my contention is there's L.J. Ho's the left fielder. Bob, if you want to win in spring training, you can certainly do that by leaving your regulars in longer.
Yeah, but
either that or employ that very fine upper end minor league system.
Yeah, there was times a few years ago was get the regulars out of there and let some of the minor leaguers play more. That was more effective.
Mm-hmm.
Get the regulars out, give us a chance to win.
And there's Alex White after his outing. Bob, what did you require to be ready for the season as a starting pitcher in the spring?
Not much, to be honest with you. I think coming out of the chute in spring training, you threw more back in the early 80s. I mean, you would start off with 3 innings right away. And sometimes now guys will start with an inning and it'll be 3 appearances till they even get to 3 innings. I've been one to where spring training doesn't have to be nearly as long as it is. I mean, that's always been my
even as a pitcher.
Yeah, I don't think it's that big a deal, especially now because these guys have been throwing since New Year's.
Mm-hmm. Nolan Fontana with a 4-3 double play, and after 6, the Astros lead the Buccos 10-4. third and 5 more in the fourth, and they've had a good day from Jason Castro with a 2-run homer and RBI double. George Springer, a pair of doubles, drove in a couple. Carlos Correa hit his first home run this spring. Chris Carter, 3 for 3, a pair of doubles, drove in 3. Some of the hitting highlights of the day. Neil Walker with a 3-run homer for the Buccos. Those are some of the scoring highlights today. We move now to the 7th inning in this ball game with Holtzcomb coming out for his second frame. Starter today was Jeff Locke for the Buccos. Roberto Hernandez started for the Astros. And it's Nolan Fontana, an infielder from the University of Florida. Switch hitter. He's had high on-base averages throughout the minor leagues. And we go to Julia.
Thank you, Brownie. With Jason Castro, had a nice day at the plate. First home run of the spring. Does it feel good to get that one out of the way?
Yeah, definitely. Always good to get the first one out of the way, and kind of downhill from there. But yeah, I mean, really happy with the way spring's going. The team's looking great. I mean, we're swinging the bats really well, and guys are throwing well. So it's all around been a fun, exciting spring so far.
Offensively, how does your swing feel right now?
Feel good. Been really happy with the work I put in the off season to kind of get back to where I needed to be, and I feel confident, feel good.
Give us some more insight on what you did this off season. What were you trying to do to turn around the 2014 season that you weren't happy with?
I just kind of took a step back and tried to examine kind of where I fell a little bit short, and what I needed to kind of adjust based on what I was seeing. And so it was a little bit of a mechanical thing that kind of just frees up my hands a little bit, so I don't have to try to cheat to anything, and allows me to just kind of react to pitches and just let it happen naturally, not try to force anything.
Awesome. Defensively for you, 6 innings you caught today. The body feel good? Are you starting to get there a little bit?
Surprisingly, feel pretty good. First back-to-back games caught in spring, and happy with it. Feel really good, and so I mean, we'll continue to progress from here, but I'm happy with kind of at this point where we're at and how everything's kind of gone so far.
You have to get yourself in shape, but you also have to get to know a lot of these new pitchers. How has that been for you?
It's been good. A lot of new bullpen arms especially, but I had an opportunity to catch a lot of these guys in live BPs and just side bullpen work. And one of the first days of camp, pitchers and catchers I don't even think we really did much as far as actually catching and having pitchers throw, but we talked a lot about what they feel like their strengths are, what they look for in a catcher, and kind of what they want, how they want guys to set up, and that sort of thing. So I think that kind of shortened the learning curve a little bit, and instead of having to work through it once we're out in games, and then you talk about it in between innings, it was kind of already out on the table, and we could just move forward from there and just get used to catching them.
Great stuff as always. Thanks, Jason.
All right, thank you.
Brownie.
Thanks, Julia. Nolan Fontana just took a leadoff walk. Now Dan Johnson's the batter.
Hey, Ash, how tough is it for a catcher to find that balance between working on his hitting and then having all that other stuff that is his responsibility? I mean, just listening to that interview, there is so much more to that catching position than playing the outfield. How do you ever work on your offense?
Yeah, I obviously didn't have enough time to work on mine, but Jason's a really bright guy, and he's insightful, and he kind of gives you enough that it makes you think about what's going on. And I remember the days when we literally would be in the catcher's gear and catching through a batting practice that was going on a backfield, whatever the case may be, and a coach would say, "Get in there right now." And you'd have your gear on, you'd throw off your mask, and you'd take 7 swings and sit back down while everybody else took round 2 or 3 or whatever, and that's the way it went. Yeah, it's a really good question on your part, and you know that things have changed with pitchers throwing batting practice, and of course hitters have never liked that, but all that goes on.
Just listening to the interview and his responses, there's so much on his plate.
Yeah.
As far as working with the pitchers, learning the pitchers, and then of course there's the actual physical defensive work that you guys have to go through, where they set up the old pitching machine and bounce balls at you and all these crazy things, and then you got to work on your hitting too.
Yep.
Because that if you don't hit, I mean, you better be an unbelievable catcher if you don't hit, and you're going to be in there. So It's not an easy job. Some people, and there's an argument for this, the toughest thing to do is to be a good catcher.
And again, I want to praise Jason Castro because he is a bright guy, and he takes that defensive side of the game as the most important thing that he has to do. But like you say, you always realize that you better swing the bat, you better drive in some runs for this club, or somebody else will come and take your spot.
I was thinking the same thing during that interview, Bob, and just the some pitchers about this stage are going through a dead arm stage in spring training. Do catchers go through a dead leg stage with all the the extra bullpens and everything you have to catch?
You do. And hearing Jason talk about surprisingly good was his response to Julia's question about how do you feel after catching back-to-back days. It is a bit surprising at this stage. I have a feeling it'll catch up with him, but then you get that chance to play maybe 3 out of 4 days, and you repeat it again, and by that point I think you're ready to go. Do I think you need 30-plus games in the spring to get ready? No. But I think I'm like Bob in that regard. I've always been told, but the pitchers need it. Well, I'm not so sure that I believe that's accurate, but you want to keep guys healthy. Maybe it's not working, though, right now, the way the game's gone with the arms and all.
No, he's at 100 pitches. Done. Why?
Yeah.
But
were guys healthier 30, 40 years ago on the mound, 20 years ago, than they are today?
Well, the eye test tells you they are, but then were they just not telling anybody because they didn't want to go home?
Was there far less caution being displayed by management and the training staff in those days, and therefore you battled through, and it didn't really turn out to be serious?
Because they weren't owed $100 million for the next 4 or 5 years. So maybe...
Nor am I, but my shoulder's killing me.
I mean, I think there was probably a little bit of a let's ride him hard and put him away wet type attitude towards some pitchers back then, because you didn't have the long-term contracts, and that has to be part of it.
We have a pitching change and a catching change. We'll tell you more. 10-4 Astros, back in a moment. In Bradenton, and here it's a 10-4 lead for the Astros over the Pittsburgh Pirates on Root Sports in both cities today. Bill Brown, Alan Ashby, and Bob Walk with you. Greg Brown will be back next inning. Colin Ballister takes over on the mound. We have a new catcher as well for the Buccos. Diaz is in the game. The Astros have runners at first and second. Elias Diaz will be calling the game now. Breeze still blowing out to right field. Beautiful sunny day on St. Paddy's Day. And Preston Tucker takes strike one.
Yeah, this is why you have spring training in Florida days like this.
Oh, yeah.
Gorgeous.
What, so the left-hand hitters can feel good about their day? That's what you're referring to,
that's why you want
right?
to be a switch hitter, so it doesn't matter, right?
Exactly. You bet.
Yeah.
Ash knows all about that.
Or you're Carlos Correa and you're able to just shoot one the other way and line it out of the ballpark. But take advantage of the elements whenever possible.
Tucker 0 for 5 so far this spring.
Yeah, the wind blowing out. Really, for the pitcher's no big deal because then it gives you that excuse.
Yeah. Which is always a good thing to tote around.
So no matter which way the wind's blowing in spring training, you try to look at the good side of it. Well, if a couple get out of here, they were wind blowing. Everybody knows it. And if the wind's blowing in, well, then that's good too because you can make some mistakes and they'll be caught.
I've always loved the spring training banter. If you have a good day, you tout the fact that you're swinging the bat or throwing the ball really well and things are statistically going well. And then when you have a bad day, it's all, well, this really doesn't matter. What really mattered to me today was the fact that I felt physically good and, yeah.
Absolutely.
Tucker cracks one on the ground. Diving play there at second by Rodriguez. Nicely done. We go to Robbie.
You got Francisco Cervelli here. How do you describe your time here wearing a Pirates uniform? I know it's been brief, but what's it like?
Well, it's been amazing, fun. It's a lot of work here, and then everybody's on the same page, and I really like it. We've been working so hard as a group, and I think we're going to see good results later.
What's your impression of this pitching staff?
It's great. The way they support each other is unbelievable. And the young guys, we got so many good arms, and I'm really happy with the guys that are going to work.
How much has Chris Stewart been a help to you?
Yeah, it's a lot of help. He knows everybody here, and I know him a long time ago, so it's good. And I know another guys from the Yankees, and it's going to be fun.
What do you think is up with that, man? All those Yankee catchers coming here. Russell Martin, Stewart, now you.
I don't know. You got to ask Neil or somebody else because I don't know.
Thank you, sir.
All right, anytime.
All right. Bill.
Thank you, Robbie. Another run scoring there on a wild pitch. Gary Pettis, the new third base coach, gets a different base runner at third. And the Astros lead it now 11-4 after the wild pitch.
I thought it was interesting that Cervelli, one of the first things he said is he loves the way the pitchers all support each other here. And that was one of the things that was really great to see last season. It doesn't always happen. But when the pitchers legitimately are always pulling for the other guy, no matter what the situation is, whether you're competing for a job. And I've been on teams where that's not the case. And that was one of the great things last year about the Pirates. And I think that's a reflection of Ray Searage a little bit, that he's able to get the guys to pull and believe in each other like they're actual brothers out there. That's a nice feeling when you're pitching on the mound and you know the other guys have your back.
In the air to right field. And that wind will take a little bit deeper, but still caught for the out to end the top of the seventh inning. The Astros get a run and extend their lead to 11-4. 11-4 ball game. The Astros lead the Pirates. And just under 3 weeks to go until the openers for both these clubs. The Pirates have not yet named their opening day starter. The Astros now have named Dallas Keuchel as their opening day starter against the Cleveland Indians.
I was talking to the skip, A.J. Hinch, yesterday, who, by the way, is a great communicator. He's nice for the media folks like us, and enables you to know what's going on. And he talked about the fact that Dallas was going to be the starter, and deservedly so. What a year he put together last year.
Sean Rodriguez, the batter, with a strike there. And the Cleveland Indians are a team that's dominated by left-handed hitters, so that could have been a factor in this
decision. Certainly could have. You know, Brownie, that if the Astros are going to succeed this year, and I've said this comment a few times today, but a number of things have to take place, including Dallas Keuchel, Colin McHugh, Scott Feldman at the top of the rotation, coming through and having solid years again, maybe as good as last year.
It's a very big part of the team, and of course the changes in the position players have received a lot of attention over the winter. But we'll see how the rotation shapes up as well come opening day. Sean Rodriguez, versatile player, hit .211 last year. They're coming from that Tampa Bay organization where they have had a lot of versatile players down through the years. Joe Madden has been able to plug in some guys who play 5 and 6 positions. He almost always has somebody like that on his team.
Yeah, I've talked to guys that played in the past with Tampa Bay. Of course, Madden is now with the Cubs, but they said when you go to spring training, bring your gloves, because he's going to spot you in there. He doesn't believe in a guy that's just a second baseman.
That definitely will be a theme for the Pirates this year. They're going to have 3 or 4 guys that can just about play everywhere.
Jose Tabata with a line drive hit to left field. And now the Pirates rally with first and second and nobody out.
Is that kind of the theme? They tell them make sure and bring your gloves into camp. And
yeah, I think both Clint and Neil, the manager and the GM, they like guys that aren't one-dimensional, that do different things. It even goes to the relievers. They're not necessarily like left-handers. They like lefties that can pitch to right-handers and get them out. They don't really go for the specialist type guy. One of Clint's sayings is he doesn't like place kickers out there in the bullpen. No specialists.
It's a good line.
Yeah. Corpus Hernandez, the batter.
And he likes that from his players also, to be able to do more than one thing.
Well, look around the major league stats from last year at least, and I think it's been true other seasons. Right-hand pitchers don't really have much of an advantage at all against right-hand hitters. The only real advantage statistically you can point out is lefties versus lefties. And it's not as huge as you might think, but lefties versus righties is the biggest advantage for hitters.
Right.
So, you know, everybody feels the need to have multiple left-handed pitchers, and yet I think statistically you could argue that it may be overvalued, other than that guy that can face a left-handed bat.
Well, I agree with you. I think if you have a depth to the point that you're not having to use your whole bullpen every night, then why not have just that one lefty that can get a lefty out? I'm kind of more into your camp than I don't mind having a specialist out there in that regard. But if you don't have a good starting rotation and you're having to use everybody all the time, maybe you can't really do that. But I think our team is at a point to where the rotation is strong enough so you're not having to blow through your entire bullpen all the time, and you can have somebody down there and just using them against left-hand hitters. So that, the point you're making about lefties pitching the righties, it's rare that you have those guys that can do that.
I don't even know if I necessarily think it's hugely rare. I think it comes down to talent. If you want a left-hander, you want one that's good and not just a guy that happens to throw with his left hand, who can get a left-handed hitter out but then really struggles against the righties. And again, statistically, that's a number that jumps out. But there are plenty of left-hand pitchers that can flat deal on the right-hand hitters. They'll fade it away and work hard in.
But I have seen guys over the years where, and I just look at them, and maybe out of jealousy, and think the only reason they're still out there in that field is because they throw left-handed.
Well, it's true.
Gustavo Nunez, the batter now. Straley, a part of that battle for the 5th spot in the Astros rotation, as was today's starter, Roberto Hernandez. And there are others in that mix as well. And Brad Peacock would figure to be in that battle if he were up neck and neck in terms of innings pitched and appearances, but he hasn't pitched in a game yet, so he's a little behind the other guys after having hip surgery.
The good news is he says he feels good.
So Peacock may not be too far behind the guys who do open the season in the Astros rotation.
The other thing we can report is that Peacock has shed some weight, and he looks like he maybe in doing so has enabled himself to possibly be better in terms of the overall command.
That's a good point. 1-2. Bob, if you were a general manager and you were preparing your starting rotation for a season, how many starters would you plan on going through with the injury factor with a lot of teams? What do you think is a good number? 8, 9, 10?
Well, I think you're kind of fooling yourself if you don't go at least 8 deep.
Right.
I mean, when I've heard in the past some GMs say, okay, we have enough pitching, and I just like shake my head like, no, there's no way. I mean, nobody can make that statement. And there are some exceptions to the rule every year where you see teams kind of get lucky. The Reds did that a couple years ago. The Brewers last season really did a good job with basically 5 guys for most of the season. But if you expect to do that, you're in for a surprise.
Ground out gets a run home. Nunez with the RBI.
We were talking before the game about all the talk and emphasis and discussion that goes on about who's the 5th guy, who's the 5th guy, who's the 5th guy. Well, it doesn't really matter because come May 1st, it'll be somebody different.
True.
That's the nature of the beast. Either somebody doesn't perform, somebody gets hurt. You better have, those 3 guys, at least 3 of those guys pitching down at AAA. They're there to be ready to pitch in the big league, and they will before the end of the season. They need to come up and help.
Yes. Diaz takes, and it's ball 1.
I think a lot of people would be surprised. You talk about a number 1, and a number 1 better be good because he matches up against other number 1s and all that sort of thing. I took a year. I was up in Toronto, and Roy Halladay was a part of that staff, and what a great pitcher he was. And I looked through his 35 starts, and he faced a number 1 like 7 times.
Into center for a 2-run single. Elias Diaz drives in a couple. And now the Pirates draw closer, 11-7.
It's interesting now. You got 2 different teams on the field battling each other, and who's going to win the second half of the game?
Yeah.
But when you talk about that number one guy, I never liked being the number 5 guy because I knew I was going to catch the number 1 guy a ton early in the season.
Starting about the second time around.
Yeah. And it's like, how many times do I have to, pitch against the other team's number 1 because I was the number 5, and you get 1 day off, and everything's messed up. Once you get to the heart of the year, then it really kind of becomes a mess, and you never really know how it's going to. But earlier in the year, you just get one little thing off, or you use 5 guys, and the other team goes with a 4-man rotation maybe for a couple of weeks because of the days off, and there you are.
Yep. Steve Lombardozzi, the batter.
You're heading to Houston, and you're facing Mike Scott.
Yeah.
Oh, those were the days.
Mike Scott was
the advance on a wild pitch.
The only time in my entire life I got the hit and run sign.
Really?
What'd you do with it?
I was asked before I went to the plate, can you put this guy in play if he throws you a fastball down the middle like he's expecting you to bunt? And I said, oh, yeah, sure, no doubt. So it was, okay, hit and run. I took a fastball for a strike right down the middle. That's what I did. I froze like a statue.
Oh, that's good.
Unexplainable.
Good stuff.
Dan Straley, by the way, has been in the dirt quite a bit. And again, one of the guys we've talked about in that battle for the 5 spot for the Astros. When you're watching a guy that's scuffling and 1 out of 3 pitches seems to be in the dirt, and he's missing a lot, and really not even close. What do you anticipate this time of year is going on for him?
I always think that when somebody gets wild like that, if they're physically okay and there's nothing hurting on them, that they're just trying to overthrow the ball and try to do too much.
But you just said the part that a lot of times me as a catcher, I'd think, well, something's wrong. Something's not feeling right for this guy to miss this much in the dirt.
It could have some kind of physical situation going on with him. Sore shoulder, something, elbow, knee could be hurt. I mean, when you see wildness, I think those are the two things that I look at right away with somebody. Is it, are they physically okay, and then are they just trying to, overthrow? Trying to make this fastball just a little bit quicker, trying to really bury the slider. And I think that comes from being a little afraid of the bat. You're not trusting your stuff. Is it good enough to get them out as it is, throwing the ball in the strike zone?
When you're feeling your oats, though, you're not overly afraid of the bat, though, right?
When you're feeling your oats, you're not even thinking out there. You don't even. You see the sign, let's go. You're not worried about what the catcher's putting down.
If you're hesitant, you're already kind of acknowledging that something's not right.
Absolutely. You see a lot of shaking. No. He's worried.
Lombardozzi with a hit. Here's a throw from Hose to the plate. Heineman with the tag. And he gets Diaz. That was 7-2 put out there.
Well, in a regular season game, I mean, we'd have a lot to talk about right there.
There was a lot to talk about. I'm one of those guys that, having been a catcher and had the game in front of me, I can't tolerate the launch throw from the outfield that should have enabled the hitter to move into second base very easily. In this case, a mistake down there as well. It's nice to get the out of the plate, but do it right so that guys are not moving up 90 feet on you.
Absolutely.
Diaz sent home by the coach Sofield, and he's gunned down by
and you don't want to probably make the second out of an inning down at the plate down 11-7 either.
That's probably mistake number one.
During the regular season, you would definitely wouldn't want that to happen.
Gong batting again. He walked first time up. Native of Korea, who signed as a free agent, and that's been an interest to a lot of people in Pirate camp. Bob, have you seen a lot of Gung in the games?
I've seen him play in a couple of games now, and to me, he is not, overawed about anything. He looks just like anybody else up there. I know that he has been aggressive. He hasn't really taken a lot of pitches. And he tries to attack the baseball. It's not like he's trying to hit a flare to right field either. He takes a nice big hack at it.
Well, he's hit a home run. He's 3 for 16 so far.
I would say the one word to describe what we've seen so far is aggressive. There's another pitch we were talking about.
It's not even close. That's one of those you go, what were you even thinking about a strike?
That's 2 feet out in the home plate. That's a 2-1 pitch. It's 2-1, and you missed that bad? Is there something hurting?
Yeah. It concerns me about Straley in this situation because, this has got to be, it actually becomes, I hate to use terms like life and death, but it feels that way at times when you're trying to salvage your career. I don't know, maybe that's a little strong.
No, I've been, but I've been in his situation to where you feel like it's life and death. I've been sent down. I've been released at the end of spring training. I know what it's like pitching under those kind of circumstances. You kind of have a feeling. You know what's going on around you. And one, if you don't feel 100%, you're sure not going to tell anybody about it. Yep. And the other thing is you are a little afraid of the bats. You don't want anything bad to happen. You're trying to miss the bats, so you missed that one.
Strikes out Gong. And the Buccos make it now an 11-7 ball game. And Greg Brown returns in just a moment.
And we are back as the pierogi race, a fixture at Pirate games at PNC Park. Not only do the race, but then they do a little Irish jig.
The Hannah win?
Ah, she fooled them.
She had that. She got the green on. She got to win the day.
Yep. I don't know.
You got names for your pierogies?
Oh, yeah. You got cheese Chester. You got Oliver Onion.
Sauerkraut Saul.
And jalapeno Hannah. I think that's it. Hope I didn't miss anybody. They retired Potato Pete. Although, didn't he make a comeback last year?
Yeah, he did. You don't remember that?
I did vaguely.
You don't remember doing the...
No, that's right. You and I did the fake open.
Right. Yeah.
Here's what Steve Blass likes to call a person of interest, Blake Wood. But his first pitch is a base hit into center field. Greg Brown now back alongside Alan Ashby, Bob Walk. There's Blake Wood. Pitched 7 games with the Indians last year.
It is a crowded bullpen to try and break into.
I was going to ask you what that requires for a pierogi to make a comeback.
Good question.
For whatever reason, they got rid of him for a few years. He never raced. He was the guy, he wore the blue hat.
Did he ever race at PNC Park even?
I don't know. He might have been a Three Rivers guy, yeah. And they brought him back last year. Who was it? Chester Cheese broke his leg?
Oh, that's what it was. That's what forced his return.
They brought him out of retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And then he turned out to not be such a good pierogi. No. He was a bad pierogi.
Yeah. How do you do that?
You had to see it. I mean, every night he was doing something that made everybody mad.
He was really... Eventually got in some hot water.
Yeah.
I mean, other pierogies were boiling mad.
Ooh. Oh, yes. He
kidding.
Definitely was in the frying pan a few times.
I wish we had more time to be...
No, we do.
Don't.
We do.
No, I don't.
Yeah, we can,
plenty of time here.
We can get into this deep if you want.
Chester Cheese gets a little close for the Astros. They used to have Chester Charge at the old Astrodome games at one time.
That's Marty the Marauder. Bradenton Marauder games played here in the Florida State League at McKechnie. Do they have any racing food going on at Minute Maid these days?
Racing food?
What do they have?
They're going to have something.
That's a great question. I didn't anticipate today.
They used to have
Taco Bell packets.
That's right.
Hot
sauces.
Yeah, hot sauce packets used to race in
Houston.
Yes.
Yeah,
one year at least.
Yeah.
Where have I been?
Yeah.
Actually, I was away for a few of those years, so...
They had like hot, extra hot, mild.
Whoa, Corey Hart's throw a little bit high, but handled nicely. Nonetheless, by Nunez. They get the out at second.
That's Colin Moran swinging the bat right there and just legging out that back end of the double play chance. He's a guy, left-handed bat at third base that a lot of people think has possibly the best left-handed swing in camp. I haven't had a chance to see a whole lot, but this is a guy that some folks think could be a very good third baseman. This is close at first.
Oh, wait, did they call him safe at second for some reason?
I don't think. I was just going to say.
I don't know how they did that.
Did he touch the bag?
He came right down on the bag.
Oh, did come down on?
Did he come down on the green bag? I think he did.
Challenge.
Replay shot, yeah.
Got a challenge. That'll be a change this year.
We need to see that again.
Managers don't have to go out now and argue. They can challenge from the dugout.
Every out is a big out right now.
That's right.
No?
No.
Oh, wow. Different angle.
No and no.
Mm-hmm.
Never give up an out.
Okay, now this is what we first saw. It made it look like he came down on the bag.
Yeah, that's
right
where
there,
I
it looked
thought
like
he
his
did.
foot was on the bag. What happens with the green bags? Misleading.
Yeah.
I was actually feeling like Charlie Finley would have loved those green bags. Oh boy, that foul ball just woke me up.
They get back here in a hurry.
Yeah, you've got to watch. Green bags on St. Patrick's Day.
A little torn up.
By the way, notice the bat speed through the zone for Carlos Correa. This minor league still, shortstop, third baseman maybe some people say, but he says shortstop. That's where he's going to play.
Fastball. Strike called.
Oh, it looked good earlier. That wasn't me, by the way.
What are you talking about now?
Greg coughed.
What?
No, that was actually me. So
it was you.
I'll take it.
Good try, Bob. Alan, I'm surprised you didn't say yes. It was Greg.
No, I got to take the heat. But I did have the cough button on. You guys are picking me up.
Well, Bob,
this is a running joke with us.
I see.
And it's not really a joke.
And I always blame it on the cough button not working.
You cannot believe the last few years how many times, radio and TV, he will cough right into the mic. And it looks like he's hitting some
wrong button.
Yeah, always gets the wrong one.
Let's all push the cough button.
Well, ball hit off the glove of Nunez, and they will wave the runner home, and he'll score. As hose from second base, throw from Lombardozzi, 4 hops into Diaz. A 12-7 Astros lead.
That wasn't the strongest of throws from left field right there.
No, and not only was it 4 hops, it was quite a ways offline. Didn't have a good direction either.
Look at this ball. Well, runner around the bag. That should be rather routine.
Yeah.
We've seen some outs handed away here in this half inning.
Lombardozzi trying to make the club. Nobody out, 12-7.
Well, get your knocks while you can, and Carlos Correa continues to pad some stats, if you will. More than that, though, impress people.
And back to the backstop.
And we've seen a number of balls bounce today.
This hasn't been...
It's not a clean game.
Yeah, not ideal here in last number of minutes.
Blake Wood was impressive the other day, has been impressive a couple times out this spring. He struck out the side in order against the Orioles on Sunday. Again, he's got big league experience with the Royals and Indians. And a chopper. Wood to first for the out. Another run scores.
When he caught that, I saw him look at the runner, and I'm like, no, please don't.
Get your out.
He was thinking about it.
So, Bob, you haven't been overly efficient with your cough button portion of the program.
No, that's a weak spot of mine. But there has a couple of times legitimately been a bad cough button. And I still get blamed for it.
I see.
So
I see.
It's not always
That's
just
awful
me.
when that happens.
Yeah, not one time, however. Good cough button, bad cough button. Has he ever just outright apologized and said, my fault?
No.
You mean like I just did when I said, no, that was mine? That was not, that was great.
Stand-up guy, Alan.
I don't believe I've done that.
No, you don't think so.
I usually try to wiggle out of it some way.
And somehow you do, Bob. You've got people convinced it's never your fault.
Do you get people sending you cough drops along the way?
Well, usually, and somehow, in a weird way, they end up blaming me for it, Alan. That's how good he is. Why do you do that to Bob?
It's tough business we're in.
Yeah, it is.
Aside from that easy aspect we were talking about earlier.
Nolan Fontana 0-2 count on him.
It certainly does look like an easier game when you're sitting up high like
boy,
this.
Does it ever.
Everything from up here slows down for you.
Speaking of which, did you notice the George Springer interview, and he used the phrase slow things down a few times? And I was thinking back to my days when the coaches used to be hollering out, turn up the dial, meat, you know, and
turn it up a notch.
Yeah, so it
don't
was,
slow things down.
Yeah, speed things up, will you?
We're talking earlier about how terminology has changed over the years in baseball. There's one phrase used a lot: slow things down.
Get your feet under you. Last spring, we had more players with their feet under them, and kept thinking only an aerialist would do otherwise.
Nice block there by Elias Diaz. So impressive defensively. And he's had a very strong spring. Figures to start at AAA Indianapolis this year for Pittsburgh.
There should be a new speed-up rule. Eliminate the phrase slow
Yeah,
things
that's
down.
right. Here's Lombardozzi, another shot.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah, just thinking of slowing things down should be penalty worthy. Where are we at today?
It's been slowed down.
3:12. We're over the 3-hour mark.
Actually, this spring, for the most part, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe 2 games over 3 hours? Maybe.
We haven't had hardly any scores like this at all. They've all been good pitching by both clubs.
Dan Johnson, with his second at bat, struck out looking in the 7th.
After going to the American League, do you see any? Have you noticed game times? Are they longer? In the
Everybody would come in from the National League and play us last year and say, the American League. But we'd go to a National League ballpark and it seemed to be the same thing. It's another one of those perceptual things. American League ball is slow. And
well, we're being kind, Bob and I, in terms of that. Oh, yeah. We'll tell you about it when we come back. Bob will blame me when we come back. 13-7, Stros. Astros lead this game at McKechnie Field in Bradenton, Florida, going to the bottom of the 8th inning. The baseball world lost a great, Al Rosen, a few days ago. Not only a great former player, in particular with the Cleveland Indians, but also an executive for a number of clubs, including the Houston Astros. And so Alan Ashby, who the former Astro, knew Al Rosen. He was the GM then at the time when you were playing. And then on to the San Francisco Giants with success.
Well, he was one of those guys. The name brought the respect along, and you knew that he had earned everything that you really should give every human being. But yeah, what a solid, very good guy.
Corey Hart fouls it out of play.
It's a big time swing right there.
Yeah, he wasn't backing off with that one.
Andrew Applin in center.
So you see Hart as a guy that fills a bench role and spot plays.
Yeah, and it could be a
platoon at first.
Platoon at first base. We'll have to see. Again, that'll be decided by the bats.
Early on, the talk is that Alvarez, once the season starts, isn't going to be in there much against left-handed pitchers. They're going to try and take as much pressure as they can off of Alvarez. Not even think about hitting cleanup. As Hart strikes out against Lance McCullers. There's a familiar baseball name. His dad, a former big league pitcher.
This has been one of the names that we've been watching rather closely as minor league seasons go on, and you keep hoping that those high draft picks can make their way to the big leagues soon and participate in winning baseball.
Earlier we were comparing the Astros to where the Pirates were 2 years ago, and even in the regard of what you were just talking, it seemed like a couple of years ago we were doing the same thing, looking at those high draft picks and hoping that they would pan out and speculating on which ones would, which ones wouldn't. And that's what it's all about when you're going through any kind of a rebuilding phase. Is you got a minor league pipeline that has to have the talent.
In spring training, you're looking for some individual stories. Alan Ashby talking about Lance McCullers. Pirate fans watching Tony Sanchez, former first-round pick. And when spring training started, not many people gave him much of a chance breaking camp with this team, but now his name has surfaced as a possible extra position player. Could catch and play some first base for Clint Hurdle. And he continues to hit in spring.
Yeah, I watched him in batting practice and just hitting the ball hard to right center field, and this was barreled up nicely.
They've always liked the bat, but there's been a throwing problem.
Until this spring anyway. He's really, at least early going, and a couple weeks into spring training, the opportunities he's had to throw.
Yeah, I think he does a good job behind the plate as far as blocking balls and all those basic things. And the throwing problem hasn't been on like where he's had to do things quickly. It's where he's had time to think.
Well, is it the thing? And of course that leaves a lot of people thinking, what are you talking about?
That's been talked about.
Yeah.
And so
it's
there were a couple of throws he made or didn't make last year on drop third strikes to first base where they were thrown down into the corner, and that
kind of not talked about because you don't want to bring it up.
Yeah,
but
you're like, wow,
pretty obvious that he did.
Part of it.
But he worked hard this offseason to try and correct that so-called thing, and so far, in the games that we've seen both here at McKechnie and over at Pirate City, hasn't shown any signs of that thing coming up. Now, Pedro Alvarez had it and was the Pirates were forced to move him to first base.
And I was like a late coming to that. I was like, no, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. But then last year, there was a couple of throws where it was like, yeah, he does.
The denials are always a part of that.
Yeah.
Ryan Zimmerman with Washington, in my opinion, about 5-6 years ago, clearly had a case of it. And everybody denied, and then it kind of finally came out. Dale Murphy, you mentioned him earlier in the ballgame, had issues as a catcher.
Yeah,
they moved him to the outfield, and it turned out fine at that point.
He couldn't throw the ball back to the pitcher.
I think that worked out rather well for Dale.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure did.
Of course, he had the wheels to go with it.
He wasn't necessarily built as a catcher either. You don't see too many 6'5" catchers.
Jose Tabata, his second at bat today. Neil Walker started at this spot of the order, the 4-hole, and was 2 for 3 with a home run and a double. And Tabata singled last inning. Now a non-roster player in camp.
Another good swing.
Tabata looking to drive the ball this spring. That hit in the
trying to reinvent himself.
Inning, yeah.
Trying to get
single
back
to left field. His third hit in 19 spring at bats.
Get back on the Pirate radar screen.
I remember the day in baseball, and I didn't even agree with it back then, but all the coaches would say to pitchers when you had a big lead, throw the fastball, challenge the hitters. Well, hitters were just salivating and ready to tee off when you were doing that. But it always makes me wonder for a pitcher like Bob, was it really difficult to pitch with a big lead when that was the mentality?
Yeah, I hated it. And that was one of the things that I think once I got released, the world didn't come to an end. And I realized that I was going to have to kind of do things my way. And now I could. And that was one of the things I used to always think about. I don't have to go out there and feed, 91-mile-an-hour hittable fastballs down the middle just because that's what you're supposed to do, that I can still continue to pitch no matter what's going on. I had to do that to survive, and that's the same thing with all these guys. And another one of those things that I used to hear all the time about pinch hitters. Oh, the guy's coming cold off the bench. He's been sitting over there. You're doing him a favor by going off speed. And I learned later on that most of those good pinch hitters, they hunt fastballs right away when they're coming in a pinch hitting situation.
Absolutely true.
And you're doing them such a favor by giving into that and going at them hard because they're cold coming off the bench. That was just such a meaningless saying, and it would get you in more trouble than anything else.
Yeah, the old challenge somebody thing, I used to just hate hearing that. And pitchers that I'm trying to work with are giving it up because they're being forced to do that.
Moran, nice play there to get Tabata for the final out. 8 innings complete here in Bradenton, Florida. 13-7 Astros. Here in the 9th inning, the Astros with 13 hits, lead 13-7. And Alan Hansen, prospect of the Pirates organization, now at second base. New pitcher, Rob Scahill. Last season with the Colorado Rockies, his numbers, this is his 5th spring outing. He's given up a couple of runs, 5 hits in 1 2/3 innings.
Hey, Greg, I think Hansen's a nice example of how our organization has changed in the last couple of years. If you go back, say, 3 or 4 years ago, we would be really talking about Hansen all the time about, how well he, seemed to handle Double-A last year, and maybe a middle infielder of the future, and what his chances are maybe breaking the camp with the team and all that stuff. We don't talk about the minor leaguers like that anymore. It's they can stay there and come up the way they should. The organization has got where they want to be in that regard.
Don't have to rush guys.
Well, they're not forced to bring anybody. I mean, there's some guys that deserve to come up fast, but they're not pushed to do it because you need talent so bad at the big league level that you think, we got to bring this guy up, or why don't we?
Yeah, Bob and I were talking about that earlier in the ballgame off air. There is the perception that if you bring a guy up too early, and I've never known exactly what that was. It's not like the Thanksgiving turkey that has the little thermometer that pops in the chest when it's the right time, in my opinion. But you'd see, I've mentioned it many times. I've played with Buddy Bell and Dennis Eckersley and others that came up technically, I guess by today's standards, too early, but it worked out very well. And I'm not sure I've ever seen the guy that I thought, because he was brought up too early, that it ruined his career. I don't know.
The one guy that comes to mind, but you never know. I know in the Pirates organization that I don't know if he came up too early, but he really didn't get much of a chance when he got to the big leagues. Was Chad Hermanson. He was a top prospect. I don't know that he was rushed.
No, I think I use Chad Hermanson as an argument of somebody that was not rushed.
They took too long to bring him up.
At what was it? He was 21 years old, and he already had 62 home runs at AAA. And it was a couple years later that he finally played in 3 games in a row at the big league level. So, I mean, that one, for me, that's an example of a guy I should have been saying, okay, you're the center fielder kid for the next 3 months. Go get him.
Well, that's the thing that clubs don't do, is they don't throw the guy out there and just come heck or high water play.
You know, the name that
J.J. Hardy was the last I recall. The Brewers did that with him.
David Wright. Is that his name? Not the third baseman with the Mets. The guy that came up with the Texas Rangers way back in the 70s.
Clyde Wright.
Clyde, no, not Clyde. The other Wright.
Jim?
Yeah, I still want to say David.
I remember Jim.
Anyway,
with Texas, right?
Texas, he was a #1 pick, and they brought him up early. The Rangers
David Clyde.
David Clyde.
I knew it was Clyde.
Yeah, that's right. Mixing names there.
Yeah,
but
David Clyde. He was out of high school.
But a lot of people have taken the liberty to say, well, see, that's what happens when you bring a guy up early. It ruins a career. I think there were other elements at play involved there. Clearly, he had the abilities. I've heard a lot of stories as to what went on and everything, but I don't think it was because he came to the big leagues that his career got ruined. That's just my way of thinking. And I'm sure as many people or more feel the other way. But
I think the bottom line is there's no magic formula.
Right.
There is no pop-up button like on a turkey, like you said, that everybody is a separate case and has to be treated like that.
I do know this organization now, under Neil Huntington, believes they really need to stay down there and get a ton of at-bats, because he'll, to this day, point to 2 players he believed stayed in the minor leagues long enough and had a smoother transition. He points to Andrew McCutchen and Neil Walker.
So what if those guys had been brought up half a year earlier?
Yeah.
They may have been just as good or better, or, who knows?
Well, one thing that has to be mixed into this conversation that we have, and is starting that big league time clock nowadays with the
That's the big
arbitration and everything. I mean, that plays its part also.
What's the kid with the Cubs now, the third baseman that's already hit 6 bombs on the spring? And it looks like he's not going to make the opening day roster, but you know what that's all about. And that's... I think
from
that's
the Cubs standpoint, it makes sense.
Yeah, it does. But I think it's something that the Players Association ought to address in terms of the overall agreement, the basic agreement, so that players are not penalized for wanting to come to the big leagues. For having the right to be there.
I agree. It is the smart move. And I used to not really believe in this and be in this camp.
Organizationally.
To keep players down until they get by that, whatever that date is. I know it's a moving target, but I used to not think that was a smart move. But now I buy into that now.
A 1-2-3 inning for Scahill. Go to the bottom of the 9th. 13-7 Astros. Telecast is presented by the authority of the Houston Astros and the Pittsburgh Pirates and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form. And the accounts and descriptions of this game may not be disseminated without the express written consent of the Houston Astros and the Pittsburgh Pirates. Heading to the bottom of the ninth, we just had our first 1-2-3 half inning today. 1-2-3, top of the ninth for Rob Scahill. And now James Hoyt on the hill for the Astros.
77 strikeouts in 60 innings.
What do you look at first when you're sizing up a guy that's working his way through the minor leagues? Is there a magic number you look at?
I don't know if it's a magic number, but as in this case, I kind of tip my hand a little bit. I look at innings pitched, and then I check the strikeouts, and then I check the base hits he's given up.
So,
and then from there, I start, wondering about other things too. But those are the first two areas I look at: is that, does it get strikeouts, and what kind of batting average do those other guys have out of him?
Innings pitched, is that kind of standalone? Like that means a guy's durable?
Yeah, I don't know if I would go there right away. Like, I think maybe you start looking at those things after he catches your eye with the other stuff. You start thinking about, the innings pitched. Nowadays, in the minor leagues, they'll take guys out after 5 innings. Mm-hmm. They might be throwing a no-hitter, and they'll be out.
Yep.
The innings are so controlled, you don't know if it's the hitters on the other team that are the limit on his innings pitched, or is there just some artificial limit that is...
Who was the biggest horse pitcher you ever played with? A guy that was just counted on as ace and impressed all of his teammates?
That's easy. It was Steve Carlton.
Okay.
I mean, just amazing. He was the man. There's no doubt. And everybody looked at him like that. Not the younger guys, veterans, everybody.
Just because he won 27 games on a team that won 53 or something on the year?
But I think it was a little bit more than that, too. He had a presence on that team and in that clubhouse that is just, it's hard for me to find words to describe. I don't care if you were, Mike Schmidt or Pete Rose. You looked at Lefty, you were a little awe of him.
Yeah. Yeah, he was same feeling playing against him, obviously. What do you think he would have said if he had thrown 170 pitches going into the 8th inning, or some large figure, 150, and had a no-hitter intact? Or for that matter, back in those days, a shutout.
Nobody would have even thought about bringing him out of the game. And I don't see that would have ever happened. I don't know if this is the actual case, but the one year I played with him, it can be looked up, I'm sure. Somebody probably will. But I can only remember him one time the entire season coming out of a game in the middle of an inning. The only other time he came out of a game was for a pinch hitter.
Yeah, who was the better option to come in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those guys are obviously very rare. Mm-hmm. But
how about Nolan Ryan? I mean, you played
what would you say as a catcher? You're the big horse.
Nolan hit a point in his career when the 100 or 110 or some version of that kind of became in vogue, and they put it on him, and he was hot and angry as a guy could get. If somebody started walking toward him like they were going to say, we're thinking about, don't even think about it.
Get back.
Yeah, and it got laid on him at one point because he had some injuries. But, yeah, real challenge when you want to bring one of those guys out of a ball game.
Elias Diaz.
The complete game is a dinosaur. You just don't see it. And it's not, it's not necessarily because the pitchers don't want to or they can't. It's
becomes so specialized.
It's the way baseball has changed.
They made up the bullpen. And it's not necessarily a bad thing.
You didn't have 7 men in the bullpen back then either.
No.
Right.
No, you didn't. I don't think you came out of spring training with 12 guys to try to make sure you could get through that first month.
Again, I could be wrong, but I'm thinking that most teams at 10, 11 was like, you're worried about your rotation. You got the extra guy out there in that bullpen. But.
Well, and I guess for me, most of the time it comes back to healthy arms. Would Steve Carlton, would Nolan Ryan, well, I don't even know, are those the rarities? Would they have been healthier? Is it possible for them to have been healthier had they had 100 pitch counts and rather strictly adhered to it? Does it make today's pitcher able to last longer?
Okay, it's over anyway. Well, that was a quick ninth inning. Hardly had time to chat.
Nope, not much chatting at all.
We want to thank.
I mean, it was only, what, 3.5 hours?
Whatever.
Let's stay and chat a little bit longer.
It was great to see Alan Ashby and Bill Brown, our friends from the Houston Astros. Our thanks to you for watching both.
Welcome to Root.
Yeah, Root Southwest and Root Sports Pittsburgh. And for Bob Walk, for Bill, Alan Ashby, I'm Greg Brown, and we'll see you down the road, Alan.
Absolute pleasure, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Alan. It was a pleasure sitting next to you.
Astros have the day off. Astros have the day off tomorrow. The Pirates will go at it tomorrow and back on Root Sports Pittsburgh tomorrow night against the Detroit Tigers with A.J. Burnett on the hill for Pittsburgh. Thanks for being with us.
At Day Subaru.